Roll call.
Mr. Freeman.
Here.
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 All righty, thank you. I'm going to ask our law director to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before everyone takes their seats, I'm going to move something up on the agenda, if you don't mind, briefly. Just to remain standing for a brief reflection on behalf of a police officer who gave the ultimate sacrifice, gave his life 4 years ago. All righty. Today, we remember and honor the sacrifice of Deputy William Bill Brewer of the Claremont County Sheriff's Department. Deputy Brewer was a remarkable peace officer who lost his life in the line of duty 4 years ago, protecting this community. Deputy Brewer dedicated his life to serving and protecting this community, and his selfless bravery will never be forgotten. Our thoughts and prayers are with his family, his friends, and fellow law enforcement officers on this difficult day as we take a moment to celebrate Officer Brewer's life, his act of courage, and the impact he made on the Pierce Township community. Thank you. Okie dokie. Once again, to anyone who hasn't signed in the back, please do so. We'd appreciate that. And anyone who's going to come up and speak in a little bit, we'd ask that you identify yourself with your name and your address. Many of us up here know who you are and where you live, but for purposes of those who may be watching online and for our fiscal officers who's taking notes, we would appreciate it if you could do that. Approval of minutes.
I request a motion to approve the regular minutes of January 11th and the special meeting January 5th.
So moved. Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Freeman,
Yes.
and Mr. Gonzalez.
Yes. Thank you. All righty. And I meant to do this at the first meeting of the year. This is my first year as chairman. And I wanted to say to all the citizens that, and I'm going to try and make this a practice of mine going forward for the remainder of my term. Basically, I want to say to you all it's actually our pleasure and privilege as your elected officials to be at your service. So thank you for putting your trust in us. We will do the best we can to execute the responsibilities with which we're charged on your behalf very prudently. We're going to move on into public presentations and actions. Now, the agenda might change just a little bit in order to make things a little bit easier on a couple of folks. But let's start with with our police chief for the commemoration of the 4th year anniversary, of Chief Proctorman's recognizing Chief John Adams. If that's okay with you, Chief, we can go ahead and do that.
So the Pierce Township Police Department would like to recognize Chief John Adams and Ohio Landsar for their diligent efforts in the search of Mr. Thomas Mills. As you recall, Mr. Mills was an elderly subject who went missing on December 6, 2022. Chief Adams and Ohio Landsar volunteered their services from the moment Mr. Mills was reported missing. They responded quickly to the scene and immediately began deploying search teams, canine teams, and a drone with FLIR technology. In the weeks that followed, Ohio Landsar conducted numerous searches and follow-up searches covering a 5-mile radius of Mr. Mills's apartment. At one point in the search, we had reason to believe Mr. Mills's body may have ended up at a local landfill. We determined the possible area of the landfill where Mr. Mill's body could have been covered an area of 100 square yards wide by 40 feet deep. Ohio Landsar spent 2 weeks working with the landfill to sift through the debris. Unfortunately, Mr. Mills's body was not located. Although to date, Mr. Mills has not been located, it was not due to a lack of effort on the part of Ohio Landsar. They logged a staggering 2,725 search hours in the Amelia area and an additional 2,404 search hours in the landfill. Chief Adams, on behalf of the Pierce Township Police Department, the trustees, and the citizens of Pierce Township, we would like to extend our sincerest gratitude to you and Ohio Landsar for your professionalism and tireless efforts in the search for one of our community members. We truly appreciate your efforts.
Yeah, it's a semi-circle right here, half moon. So this is just a handful of 50 members we have. A lot of them are working. A lot of our guys are firefighters, EMT, paramedics, construction workers. We're all volunteers, nonprofit organization. We aid assist civil authorities and different agencies throughout the state of Ohio, free of service. It eliminates much of bag movement there. Eliminates. So when we're all on scene, we it kind of frees up the police officers and firefighters out there to go to real 911 calls. So we appreciate this, and we're here to help you all any way we can. We do a lot of disaster calls, lost missing persons, crime scenes. We'll do cold cases as well. So we it's a pleasure being here tonight with you all. Meet everyone, and this is Rob Knox. This is Kyle Astep, Tim Adams, Chad Pemberton, Greg. I can't keep. I got 50 people. The Greg. We have Nick, Paul, Katrina, Danielle, and Catherine.
He did it.
Well, you know, we're a small department, so the resources that you gave us in the search of Mr. Mills was impressive, and you never stopped searching for him during this active investigation. And unfortunately, he has not been located, but like I said, it wasn't because of the effort that you put forward. So we truly appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you all very much. The work that you do under sometimes very grim circumstances is much appreciated in this community and elsewhere. Thank you. Okay. Administrator Williams.
I'll just have to speak loud.
Hold on, time out. You guys don't have to stay if you don't want to.
You are welcome, however. Thank you again.
All right, time back in. Tim, you're it.
All right, thank you. Mr. Chairman and board members, if you recall, last fall, the board went through a comprehensive goal setting session that spans 2023 to 2024. And one of the top goals that we had, or the board had at that time, was to strengthen the community and our development, our future development of the community. And one of the goals that was set out, and that is that we would create a new position within the township that would direct our community development and planning efforts. And 1st of January, if you recall, you approved that job description in that position. And it authorized us to move forward with that. That position was advertised and formally within the township. We received one application for the position from someone that we all know and highly respect, and that is our current planning administrator, planning and zoning administrator, Eddie Carter. And after we received that application, the chairman and I sat down and had an interview with him, talked about the vision for the community. He's been with us for 4 years, is that correct? For almost 4 years. They've done a really outstanding job. Certainly the 7 months that I've been in the township, I can state that he's an absolutely fantastic employee and brings a tremendous amount to our township. So it's certainly my pleasure that I would now recommend to the board that you approve the appointment of Eddie McCarthy to the position of Director of Community Development and Planning for Pierce Township at a starting annual salary of $86,000.
I will echo everything you said, Eddie. You've done a fantastic job for us. I mean, right now you're multitasking. You're running the audio visual, which is another hat you wear. So I just feel like you've never hesitated to put the time in and the effort, and you're very talented too. So I think we're very fortunate to have you in the township. So I will make that motion.
I'll happily second that motion. Although, are you sure you want to do this? Yeah. All right, as long as we don't have to call back the search and rescue unit to find you later after you like realize what you did, you know? But yeah, I happily second that.
And the public is hereby assured that we have made an excellent choice. Roll call, Debbie?
Mr. Kelly.
Yes.
Mr. Freeman.
Yes.
Mr. Campbell.
Yes. All righty, and this is where we're going to make just a little bit of, are we going to do any kind of a public, do you want to photograph or anything, Eddie, or Mr. Williams? No, okay.
Do you wish to commemorate the last day of your life?
Okay, all right. So this is, we're going to make a slight change to the agenda, and I'm going to request that we move one of our residents, Dr. Peter Kay, who would like to discuss an item with the board. Is Dr. Kay here? Yes.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to have a few minutes of your time. I'm here to make two requests for the board's consideration. One is to create a wall of fame here in this room, preferably on that wall to your left, to the audience's right, where we would honor citizens who've gone out of their way and done extraordinary things for the township. And in addition to suggesting we do that, I'd like to suggest that George Carpenter be named the first recipient of such an award and have his data mounted on the wall, and Sally and I will volunteer to pay for whatever it takes to get that done. Let me tell you a little bit about George. He had a long and successful career at Procter & Gamble, working with senior leadership, had a lot of opportunity to testify before Congress and to work with people who didn't always have the same ideas. So he learned negotiating skills and how to convince people that his approach perhaps was better than theirs. He retired to Colorado, built a home in the mountains, in the woods, and eventually he got tired of trying to maintain all that property, particularly what was going on there, and decided to come back to Cincinnati to be closer to his two children who were raised here and still live here today. From the day he got here, he got involved in the township. And I think you'll see in a few minutes how involved he really got. Let's just go through a few things that he did. He got here about 10 years ago. And the very first thing that he did was to get involved with Kroger, with the developers of that property where Kroger now sits, with at that time Amelia and Pierce Township trustees, because the property was going to straddle both communities. And he helped negotiate that deal and make it happen. And of course, today, most of us enjoy that Kroger and spend a lot of time in that store. About the same time, he got involved with an effort we were making to help the township do some strategic planning, looking forward. And he eventually took that effort over and was very effective in leading that. He got involved with financial considerations. And when I say he got involved, he really got involved. Trustee Freeman can tell you how much George did in that arena. But if he was asked to look into financials, he not only looked at the current financials, but he went back 5 or 10 years and looked at trends and said, this is where we're going. This is what we should take advantage of. Maybe these are some things we should change. He got involved in negotiations for the state of Ohio, our neighboring municipalities, and was very much involved with Trustee Freeman at that time. He got involved in the discussion to preserve the financial viability of our police and fire departments. We were at a time frame when there was a lot of change going on in the communities. Our departments were relatively small. We value them very much, but we saw them running out of money. And he spent a lot of his time trying to figure out how we could be more effective with the money we had and trying to figure out how we could get them more consideration so that we didn't get taken over by the county or someone else. He was an integral member and driver of the Parks Commission. And I think all of you know how much he did in that arena. And within that, he designed, he built, and he maintained the 2 trails over the History Trail and the hiking trail that goes through the woods. Sally and I, from the time we moved in here, hiked through those woods. We spent more time trying to avoid tripping over rocks and fallen trees than we did enjoying the scenery. When George got done, trails were done. You could walk without any concerns and enjoy nature and not worry about killing yourself trying to cross something or go up a hill or down a hill. Not only that, he spent a lot of money to buy a 4-wheel drive vehicle, which he then used. He was our next door neighbor, so we saw him leaving many days to drive it over to the park and go in and maintain that park on his own. And as you know, we dedicated both those trails in his name just a few months ago. He was an on-call advisor and supporter for anything that came up. And I think the trustees can verify the fact that whenever they had an issue, they could feel free to call George and he would help them. And he was always available for any opportunity or for a crisis or for a long-term consideration. Now, why would we honor him? There are a lot of people here, the people in this room, and many more people come regularly to these meetings. They come with good ideas and suggestions. They come willing to pitch in and help. They sometimes try to hold the trustees accountable in ways they don't want to be held accountable, and vice versa, to support the trustees. We have people like Doug Dressy, who takes his time to head up the Parks Commission and who does an outstanding job and spends a lot of time in it. But there's one big difference. Most of our citizens who volunteer for the township are either still engaged in a daytime job, which takes a lot of their time, or they're retired and they want to enjoy their hobbies and be with their families. George, when he moved here, decided he loved this community and he wanted to serve it. And he made it his full-time job to serve this community. It was a day and night affair for him. It was total involvement. And I think that's what set him aside from all the rest of us. In addition to that, he was a plain old good guy, probably the best neighbor that Sally and I have ever had. So with that, I'll sit down, shut up, and if you have any questions, please feel free.
Thank you very much, Dr. K. We might ask you a few questions if you wouldn't mind remaining for just a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
I know you, you can please
No,
by all
I'm
means
okay.
take your seat. Well, I couldn't do anything but echo, your very eloquent sentiments about Mr. Carpenter. He truly did go above and beyond, in my opinion. And a dedicated public servant like that is truly hard to find. Yeah, I think that idea is a novel one. It's a noble one, and I'd like to express my appreciation to you and your wife for offering to fund that initially. Mr. Williams, any thoughts on? I think we talked that maybe elsewhere where you've served that there have been similar endeavors.
The only thing, Mr. Chairman, that I think when we talked about it was that there's a memorial policy that's generally developed alongside of those so that you kind of know, what rises to the level of Mr. Carpenter for, future nominees and so forth.
Okay.
And I'd be more than happy to volunteer to serve on any committee that wants to get more involved and see how best to set that up.
From my perspective, I think it's a fine suggestion, and I do support what Mr. Williams said. We don't have any kind of a policy like this. No, I don't think anyone's approached the board, at least in my understanding, with a proposal of this kind. But I think that might be, from my perspective, a next step maybe that we consider. Gentlemen, input.
Yeah, a policy, and you would probably need some sort of committee to have a criteria or a group of folks to maybe not totally objective, but to have some kind of filter to if we're going to do this moving forward, a wall that you have people. I kind of think of it's probably maybe not a great comparison, but I think of the Grand Ole Opry, right? They have a wall.
I didn't picture you as a Grand Ole Opry kind of guy.
Yeah, you have a committee there, right? They have to vote on something. But I think I love the idea. George, of course, did a ton for the township. But I like the idea of kind of setting something to honor folks like that moving forward. I think it would be a good idea as maybe next steps to put together or inquire more about some sort of committee and or a set of criteria, generally policy, if you will, that kind of helps us determine who may be eligible, for lack of a better term, for something like this moving forward.
How does that sound?
It sounds good. And, another way of saying it is so many of the companies I've worked for and the public agencies that I've worked with have a way of trying to honor people on whose shoulders we really stand. And what he did for this township is lasting. A lot of future generations will enjoy it. And not only that, it's an inspiration to citizens. And they say, gee, look what one guy did and look at the legacy left behind. Maybe I could spend a little more time doing this myself. So it's also an encouragement for everybody who comes in this room and takes a look at it.
So having said that, then what are we doing? Are we suggesting that the administrator begin the process of showing us the path toward a policy? Because I don't want to have the presentation and the suggestion and no action. As I understand it, I would reach out to Dr. K and others in the community. We could always put out a call for those that might be interested to start this sort of memorials committee. And their first task would be to come up with some policies that could follow. And then we would bring that to the board so that you could adopt the policy, and then they could start the nomination process, including Mr. Carpenter potentially being the first honoree on that. That's correct. So he would be the Babe Ruth. Baseball, right? He would be the first inductee into the Hall of Fame. Right. The other thing I would say, Dr. K, is that it might not be that wall. It might be someplace else, because we don't know if that wall is going to be there in a few years. So it might be a discussion that we're also discussing the physical needs of the township, the offices, the police office, the police department, et cetera. So that being said, I can't guarantee you a wall.
Yeah, the only thought was a lot of people come in here and look around the room the first time they're here, and it's a great place for them to see what folks before them have done.
Right. I just simply am saying that might not be the wall.
Yeah, understood.
But I think we have to make sure, Mr. Williams, that as we start to have that discussion about needs, physical needs, if we're going to move down this path, let's include that into the discussion.
And I don't know that we need, thank you, Dr. K, very much. Thank you for your
Thank you very much.
information. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thanks for putting me in quickly.
Thank you. Yes, sir. So our next move in this respect would be basically to look at forming a committee. I don't know that we need a motion to that effect, but we just take that under consideration and move forward in that direction.
I think what I would recommend is that more than that, you just kind of give us a report on if you could do some just searching to see if there are other communities that have done this. And then what have they done? What are the best practices, so to speak? And then just see what you bring back, and then we can pick and choose from what they've done and see what we want to do. That makes sense?
I agree. Let's authorize the administrator to do some research.
Yeah.
And give us some more information about how a committee like this may be structured and a policy might be structured.
Right.
All right.
Okay, Mr. Williams, there you go.
All right, time's up on that subject.
All
Next.
righty, so the signal is heard loud and clear. All right, we are pleased to have a representative of Duke Energy, Mr. Chad, is it Schaefer or Schaffer?
Schaefer.
Okay, Mr. Chad Schaefer is here to approach the board to discuss the Bethel to Batavia gas line project.
A little
Welcome,
taller.
Mr. Schaefer.
Well, that'll work. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman and trustees, for having us out this evening. We appreciate it. For the record, Chad Schaefer, 7821 Kansas Drive, Madeira, Ohio.
That's
From
not in
that
Pierce
county to
Township,
the-
man.
To the west.
That's not, that's not in Pierce Township, so you're not allowed to talk here.
That's right. But I am vice chair of the Claremont Chamber of Commerce.
Oh, okay,
Oh, that
we'll
means something.
let we'll let it slide.
Very invested here in the east. Appreciate your time this evening. We wanted to come out and give you an update on our C367 Bethel to Batavia natural gas pipeline project. I know you've heard much about this over the years, and we have worked with administrators, both Tim and Loretta prior to Tim, and with the trustees, educating on the need for this pipeline. We are at a point now where we will be in construction in May timeframe. I have a colleague here with me this evening, Brad Sider, who is our project manager for this project. It's really a critical project for the region. When you think of gas capacity and a lot of the growth that we're seeing out east, both residential and commercial, you really have to have both electric and gas capacity to be able to meet that organic growth, but also economic development needs. So when you think of large developments such as Nestle Purina, you think of many other businesses that are expanding to the region, you have to plan for the existing growth, but also the future growth. So this line is about a 14-mile, 12-inch high-pressure distribution line that is going through the county. It will add significant capacity to the county and the region for growth. And we just wanted to come out this evening, kind of give you an overlay of the project and where we'll be in the next couple months. We do have next week for public officials, we have a pre-construction meeting that is being held at our gas operations facility down on Kellogg Avenue. So we'll go a little bit more in depth with the project and give you a little bit of a look ahead of what we're anticipating. And Brad can talk a little bit about when we'll know more from our contractor in terms of areas where we will be working, but we'll coordinate closely with the community as we get more information, let you know where we'll be. This project really only touches a small segment of Pierce Township, as you'll see on the map here. Without further ado, I will turn things over to Brad Sider, who is a new dad, but not really a new dad. It just have a newborn, right? Third, it's your third.
So yeah, appreciate everybody's time tonight. Just want to say thanks for the opportunity to be able to talk about this project. This project actually dates back to about 2019 is when we really started the initial planning stages. I was talking with Chad and others about this. I've actually had 2 kids since I started this project. So I'm really looking forward to seeing this go to the finish line this year. But it is an exciting project for the community, not just Pierce Township, but Claremont County overall. And so I thought the best thing I could do tonight is to really kind of show you where this is going to be constructed, give you a visual of what it looks like, the small impact to Pierce Township. I'll talk a little bit about, more logistically how it might impact the community during construction, and then open up for any questions that you guys may have. So the map that I have, you guys can see on the screen, you'll see a lot of purple lines. Those kind of represent the high pressure distribution, or really the backbone natural gas infrastructure for the Claremont County area. The blue highlighted area, there's a polygon, that's really just the overlay of Pierce Township. And so what's left is there's a line kind of in red that goes down from below Bethel and circles around the East Fork Lake and then terminates up at the Batavia area. That is this 16-mile, 12-inch natural gas pipeline that we're going to be installing. And if you think about it, if you take that off the map, there's really a lack of major natural gas infrastructure in the area. And so this is really going to be kind of the backbone for growth in the region as we move forward. So as Chad mentioned, I've done a lot of planning over the last few years. We're really at a stage now where we're getting ready to go to construction. We did build 2 main laydown yards, one in the Bethel area that was constructed back in November and December, and then one at the Batavia area as well, at the very north end of this project. We have all of our material on site already, and then we'll plan to go to construction in May. Now, as Chad mentioned, I have a pre-construction meeting set up for next week. That's really to talk through logistics of what construction is going to look like and where we're going to be. But the first part of that is really to start a tree clearing process and some of the clearing and grubbing. We have a window where certain amounts of trees or certain areas of trees have to be cleared by the end of March. So we're actually going to start the clearing process as soon as the end of February and have that done by the end of March. If you could, Chad, can you scroll in a little bit? I want to hit exactly kind of on the edge of where this impacts Pierce Township. So as I mentioned, it's really just a small corner off of 125 that's going to be directly impactful to the community itself. Zoom the other way. There you go.
Is that better?
Zoom in a little bit more if you could, all the way in on this. So as it crosses 125, there's really only a couple of properties. But what I do want to point out is as we start to ramp up with construction in May, there's going to be a lot of heavy equipment traffic coming through 125. That along with 32 will really be the main thoroughfare for how our contractor gets all their equipment, to site in and along the route. We don't know exactly at this point in time, what areas we're going to be in when. We're kind of mapping that out now. We've been working with the county, working with, others to kind of figure out logistics of what any type of traffic control might look like. The good thing about how this was designed is there's not a lot of road impact. Everything's really going to be bored underneath of a road. Really, streets are going to be mostly used for just logistical, just to deliver back and forth on certain areas. But I would say, for the township itself, my expectation is that the impact that you will see will be solely on 125 and the truck traffic that comes through there. We have it set up to where, and as the project manager, Chad's always available. I'm always available. What I like to do typically is before we really get heavy into construction, answer any questions that you guys may have in terms of logistics, what things may look like. For heavy equipment to be going through 125, if the township would prefer, what we do a lot of times is a pre-post cammering of the area that we travel on. That way, if there's any damage documented, that's on us. We want to make sure as representatives of the community or good stewards of the community that we're taking care of any restoration issues that may come about. So with that, I'll open it up for questions. Again, I know it's not a major impact to Pierce Township, but certainly it's going to be a benefit to it down the road once this is installed.
Right. So the squiggly reddish, orangish, yellowish line, that is the path of the pipeline, and it terminates. What is the road that it's kind of terminating?
It's going across 125. You see there on the screen,
right? And
then it goes all the way up to Old State Route 32.
I'm going south into Pierce.
Oh, I apologize. Are you talking about?
That's got to be Malk Road somewhere around there.
Yeah,
right?
that's what I was wondering what that is.
Correct. You're talking about the one that goes north-south there?
Yeah.
Correct. I believe that's I thought that was.
It looks like Malk, but.
It might be. If you could, Chad, it should show you exactly what the road name is. I thought it was Lindell Mount Holly. I could be wrong. There's a development going in.
Lindell, not Holly.
Lindell
Okay.
Mount Holly Road. Correct. Yep. There's a storage area right across the street. I believe there's a daycare center right there at the corner as well. And then there's a development right where you see the panhand that's going to be going on over
So
the next
this is
couple of
further
years. as well.
east from Pierce. This is more Monroe.
Correct, Monroe.
Okay.
Monroe is, yes. Is what is
Well, we
above.
appreciate you strategically avoiding Pierce. It almost looks like you didn't want to deal with us. Just kind of nip through the one little corner of it.
Yeah, but
We
then
looked at a lot of options and logistically trying to make it work out. What I would say is the benefit, I'm glad that it's not going to directly impact you. But what I say is the benefit will be there if natural gas is needed in certain areas. So we've had a lot of customers already ask about requesting natural gas off of this line, and that's certainly going to be an opportunity into the future.
but I love,
If you think about this, and Brad said this to me, and it really stuck in my head, not being an engineer, but you think about the trees, you think about the branches, the trunk, right? This is more the trunk of the tree, and as you have a distribution system that's built out over time in your neighborhoods and delivering your natural gas for your home heating, your cooking, right? That's more of the branches, so that kind of helped me conceptualize it a little bit.
Yeah, I assume with a 12-inch gas line, it's not a branch. It's a trunk, right? Because I know what comes into my house.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, so
Not
it's
12
a main
inch.
trunk, main artery.
And how deep does this thing have to go?
Minimum 4 feet of cover over top of it.
I
So
see.
And you all will be available naturally for any restoration issues that would impact for private property owners.
absolutely. Yeah, so we have 99 unique easements that we've had to acquire on this project, and we have them all in hand. So we've been working directly with property owners. I have somebody hired as a third party just to evaluate all the special provisions that the property owners had to make sure that we're compliant with their requests. And then we do follow-up restoration. We'll finish this by October of this year, be in service, and then we'll continue to monitor our restoration. And if we have to do spring touch-up, we obviously do that as well. It's pretty standard practice.
Okay. And Mr. Williams is going to have access to your information. And you need
Absolutely,
to-
absolutely.
Okay, you'll-
What I would say too is we do have a project website, email and hotline phone number. I'd be happy to share that if you want to post it on the township's website. That way, if anybody does have questions, they don't have to worry about
Right.
going to you. They can come to us directly.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
That takes away a lot of, questions you guys may get.
Yeah, that's a fantastic idea.
And the availability of that pre and post imaging, I think would be very helpful.
Absolutely.
Could request that on the record.
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Any questions from anyone else?
I'd just like to thank Chief Wright for sending some of his team as well. We had a natural gas safety briefing a few weeks ago that we'd like to have with our communities from time to time. Brought them down to Kellogg Op Center. I hope you found that beneficial, but just appreciate you taking part in that. Thank you.
Side question, in the event that a resident or group of residents, a neighborhood, were interested in connecting to natural gas where that were not available currently, is there a process whereby they can petition Duke or Senator Duke to initiate that process?
Absolutely. Yeah. Typically, we have a group that they would call in for a new service. And then we have a group that works on, what that looks like as far as designing the tap off of this to provide, gas service to neighborhoods, individual residents, whatever it may be.
Not necessarily this line, but let's say elsewhere.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, same thing.
There could be other mains, but there is a process. We have a gas marketing team. So there's a gas marketing specialist that is designated for each area around all of Greater Cincinnati. They can look at it and determine what the cost and feasibility is of extending the main. Sometimes if you have larger end use customers like a manufacturer or a business, a school, it might unlock more potential because we can sometimes cost justify that main extension based on the load. They put that into it, it's complicated, but it's a net present value tool. And that's how they determine if they can extend the main for free, which is the best way to extend it. In my mind. Otherwise, it is customer cost, because we can't put that back on all the ratepayers, right? So there's a process there. That if you're interested or you know somebody interested, we can put them in touch with that local gas marketing team.
If you could just so we have some point of contact, rather than going through a telephone tree at the main, office, if you could just give us a number away, I would appreciate that. We can keep that on record in the event that comes up down the road in any of our neighborhoods. Okay, thank you all very much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you guys. Thanks for the
Thank
time.
you. Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, next we
You're next.
have on the agenda, Mr. Morton and Mr. Stewart.
No, we don't. We have Joe Garrett. Joe Garrett from Trebell. He's here to give us an update on the energy program that we've been part of.
Thank you. Got some handouts here, actually.
No. Thank you. Can I borrow your glasses, Joe?
This is hard to read.
We're all very concerned with the new one.
So in case you guys missed it, this is Joe Garrett. Joe Garrett is with Trebell Energy. Trebell is the company that Pierce Township contracts through to do energy aggregation. So electric, natural gas kind of dovetails into the discussion we just had a second ago with Duke. And for those folks that that aggregate through the township's program, he has some information tonight about energy rates and how at this point they're fluctuating. And so he wanted to give us a bit of an update where it stands. And he's got a couple of, I think, requests for us. So once he's done negotiating over here, we'll let him have the floor.
Okay, so I gave you, there's an amendment there. And this is something a lot of the townships are doing. And what this does is basically we set a price and it allows us to sign a contract with a natural gas provider or electric provider to purchase for the aggregation on the township's behalf, which is a little bit different. The reason for that is these two graphs that you have are natural gas. They're different timelines. So this one, without the pretty green and yellow on it, is more of a.
So I'll hold this up so y'all can see it. Right.
Yeah, it's a graph it runs over like a pre-COVID timeframe. Yeah, this thing goes back, it's like 2 or 3 years. And what you can see is there is quite a bit of stability. There's not a lot of movement in that graph until you get out to the end, and this is right around pre-COVID. So this is the end of 22, this portion right here, okay, the end of 23. What that represents is a tremendous jump up in the cost of natural gas, energy costs in general. This is more of just the last a shorter time frame, like a couple of weeks. Okay. The reason for this is the reason that we're requesting the ability to buy is, as you can see, and I know it's small there, and I tried to blow it up more, but I couldn't. This thing is like 3-hour time frames. And so what you're seeing is within a 3-hour time frame, you're seeing drastic movements in the prices, which we really didn't have that back here. Okay, so what's happening is you aren't getting prices that are held for more than a day. You get the price today, you sign it today, or it's not guaranteed for tomorrow. It will be repriced, which makes it very difficult to get a price, come to a meeting, because it's already the next day before I can turn that back in. It's I come down, I'm giving you guys prices that may or may not be any good, because the market is moving so rapidly. Now, right now, the market is down. I think what you're going to see on the electric, and on the electric, we are, I think we're a June 1st start date. So we're good through there. Natural gas is not in, but it has moved down significantly. The belief is it's going to move back up. The downside, and I hate to be the bearer of bad news, is all the energy markets, all the utilities prices are going up. They get their power through an auction process. This happened last year in what is the old Dayton Power and Light market. And so they experienced this last June. You're going to experience it this June. And what they experience is their price to compare and their choice offer through the utility on May 30th of 22 was 4.8 cents a kilowatt for electric. On June 1st of 22, their price was 10.9 cents. So 2.5 times. They've had what they've done is they've already gone out to auction on part of the load, and the remainder will be probably here in March. The part of the auctions that they have secured, which in Duke will start Duke, AES is doing it, AEP, First Energy, all the Ohio Edisons are all going to this model. And all the prices are ranging between 10 and 11 cents per kilowatt. Now, they might get some cheaper auctions that move in at the end. But the anticipation is come June 1st, we're going to see 9-10 cents a kilowatt at the utility level. We are seeing bids right now in the mid to upper 6-7 range. So we're going to want to act soon to secure that pricing, because we feel that's going to be pretty good pricing and it's going to look really good comes June 1st. Of course, we aren't going to start it until then,
right,
but we need to secure something. On the natural gas, the rates have moved considerably down to where we're seeing some sub 50s. We don't believe that we're not going to see 4 and 5 cents on electric. And I doubt we're going to see 30 cents on gas anytime soon. Could be wrong, but that's in every indication, it's not looking that way. So what we're asking is, and you know, I'd be a happy guy if I walked out of here tonight with it, but we don't have to have it tonight, but we need it soon. Is that amendment that legal counsel has, that Tim has, gives us the authority to purchase electric for the aggregation program. And it says up to 3 years. We're looking at wanting it to expire in May of 25. There is reasons for that. We don't see significant downward price through that period, but there is potential outside
influences.
Yes. I was trying to think of how to say it.
I took care of it for you.
That could affect those rates, and we want to be in a position to take advantage of that. And it will be that time frame puts us in a February, March timeframe, which is when you would see that. But what this does is it gives us the ability that if the rates come down to a certain point, that we can execute it that day. We can call up and say, send us the contract, we can sign it for you and send it back, and we lock the price. Gas, we don't have a program. Price at the utility is high, but we're through the winter. Gas usage is going to drop off by the time the program could start. The downside that we're get is we are way down on gas. We don't know how long it will stay down. So there is a time element here, because the market, what we do is follow the market. And if the market's down, that's great, and you can get deals. But the market can move. It can go up and it can go down. And the purpose of this graph is to show you that's what it's been doing. And it's been doing it much more rapidly than we're used to.
It's volatility, Joe.
Thank you.
Everything has been very volatile.
Well,
So what is it? I mean, so crude oil is the biggest driver of the natural gas price, right?
no, it's like anything else. You have
Google
supply,
says
you have supply,
otherwise.
you have
Google
supply,
says
you have,
54%.
you have supply demand,
Yeah.
and then you have outside influence. So, and you have a little bit of all that. There is we've closed coal plants. And the replacement for coal plants is more expensive, and we're not pulling more gas out of the ground. And the pipeline guys are not getting their permits approved to put in so they can move from the wells to the mains like they want to. And so that drives price up.
So where are we at right now?
I think today you were on the gas, I think Duke's price was 80 some cents,
But what, aren't we locked in with something for the?
not on gas.
Oh.
On the electric, I believe we're 4 point something
We were locked in, but the company, what's that?
on the gas.
You s-
1.63.
Yeah,
On the electric,
Gas.
gas, okay,
no, on the electric,
electric.
on the electric,
Okay, so everybody's on the same page. What is it for electric?
4.63.
There
That
you
sounds
go.
about right.
Your side or our side, or the resident side? We're
Residents.
residents, okay.
His side is the resident side.
That's what we're paying.
But that, yes, and they're gonna
Okay.
be paying that, I believe it's either through the end of May or end of June. I looked at it, but I looked at like 40 of them today.
I believe it's June.
And I think it's June 1st. I think it's the end of May.
We're not locked in on gas at all.
What's that?
We're not locked in on a gas price currently.
No. But we need, the time is that. Because it's low. The market's been trading, the market was trading over 90, it's worked its way down, it bounced back and forth between. And when I say 90 cents, that's not what the consumer pays, that's the actual market price. You gotta add, there's a lot that gets, gets added on to that from the supply side. But we recently, it was the last few days, it's been below 30 on the trading, so that puts you in about the 50 range for actual gas, and that's low. I mean, it hasn't traded that low in months.
And how long would you be looking to negotiate a price to lock in for?
We would like to run everything through May of 25.
For both?
So if you were able to.
Well, no, not on gas. Gas, we would probably be looking at 12 months. Is what we do, unless there is a benefit to going longer. So what happens on gas? Gas is different than electric in that the usage is consumed, the majority of the usage is 3 months. Okay, so you have so when you're doing the modeling of, but you have future prices for every month. And you have to accommodate all those when you're going out. And so when they're giving you a fixed rate, they're taking what months are involved. If you have more spring and fall months, your price is typically cheaper. If you're adding in more winter months, your price is typically higher because the winter months is when you use it and the price tends to go up.
So you want to start in the spring with your,
Yes, that's why we're wanting to start sooner because we're gonna pull in more of those months.
So
Waiting till September will not result in a great price typically.
is your role here tonight, though, primarily to ask that we sign an electric contract or
My
both?
goal is to ask you to sign the amendment that gives us the ability to sign a contract on your behalf when the market's down, and we can secure a price because we're only getting a day to do it.
for
I-
gas
I-
only?
For both?
Electric.
Electric,
Yes.
okay, both.
Both.
So
both.
where's the electric?
What's that?
Where does the electric come in? We've talked only about gas. Is it the same thing?
The utility rate is going to skyrocket come June 1st. It's the same time your current program expires.
Well, you should be buying stock futures and electric and gas, and you won't be here, right? You'll be in an island.
No, I'll be here.
You should, if you are that confident.
He's
I
got,
would buy my futures right now.
he's got kids in college, man. There's a lot that he's got to pay off.
Yeah,
So
so
make sure I understand what you're, because I was kind of in the interest of time, okay? So our current rate expires as of June 1st, right, for electric? And we're at roughly 4.63.
yes.
And is it your contention that after this June 1st or so period, that the consumer rate is going to be approximately 10-ish cents, or the purchase rate, the utility purchase rate?
The rate at the utility. So when you have an aggregation program, you have the utility. What we're talking about is generation, okay? We're a deregulated state.
Mhm.
So you can buy generation from anywhere. All your residents are getting phone calls, maybe people knocking on their door, stuff in the mail. Let us supply your generation. but if you don't, you go through the utility. The utility has a default rate.
Mhm.
One of the reasons we have not replaced the gas program is because the market was above that default rate. Okay, in AES last year, when that price went up, we couldn't replace contracts on the electric either because the 10.9 was the default rate at the utility. The market rate was at 11 and 12 cents. So it could not be replaced. What we're saying is, right, so we know when we get, we have to do something by April 1st to even have a program, or we can't get it done in time. Okay, we know this. That's just how long it takes through the PUCO guidelines of things that have to happen. But right, if we wait, right now, I know that I can get in the 6s. So I know if I do it in the next week or so, the odds of being able to get something in the 7s to sit, higher 6s is available. It won't start until June 1st. If I wait for a month, it might be back up to 8. I don't know this. I know where it's at today. And the problem is if I come back to your next meeting and say, guys, here's a price, and you say, oh, great, let's do it, and you sign it. And I take it and turn it in tomorrow, and they say, no, that's no good anymore. Sorry. Here's the new price. It's a moving target that we can't hit. So typically, when the rates were steady, they would hold the price. I could come to your meeting, go, here it is, turn it in the next day, they'd accept it. It's not a problem. They'd hold them for 10 days, 5 days. They'd hold them. They aren't doing it. They're bait, and a lot of them won't even give you a price unless you tell them, I'll sign the contract today. They won't even give you a price.
I get that part. I
Yeah.
mean, I want to get out of here as much as everybody else, but this is a lot of money too. And I don't want to just gloss over this and be like, yeah, go ahead. So is there any penalty for us getting out of, aren't we locked into electric? So if we give you the authorization today.
We won't start it till June 1st.
Till June 1st. And that's when our electric,
Right.
what we're locked in at.
Yeah, we're not going to replace.
And how long?
We're not going to replace 4.6.
And how long would you be going for the electric? Because
That's the one that we want to run through May of 25.
and the gas, similar time frame. So
The
about 2 years.
the gas, we can't go more than 24 months. That's a
Okay.
PUCO rule.
So you're
Electric,
kind of protected there because you're kind of, you might be catching a falling knife as far as falling prices, but you're getting it and then you're not locked in forever. And if you were wrong and they continue to fall, it's 2 years.
Well, your residents are never locked in.
Well, I understand. No, I understand that, but we're trying our best to negotiate the best deal for them. Residents are never locked in. If you guys ever don't want to be a part of the program,
That's exactly what
you can go outside of the program. I
Right.
just want to make sure that, I'm, obviously this is your business. I'm just, it's a lot of money at stake for everybody when you add it all together.
Right.
And I just want to make sure.
That's what we're doing. And that's why we're asking for what we're asking is to negotiate the best deal. We have to move fast.
So if we execute an agreement with you, we're executing an agreement for you, allowing you to negotiate. We're not signing on the bottom.
To be clear, we're not negotiating an agreement. We're negotiating an amendment to an existing agreement.
Yeah, we already have an agreement.
Allowing you to negotiate.
We already
Is
have an
that-
agreement as your consultants.
Okay, so we're extending that
So
agreement.
here, we're making addendum that you're giving us, it's not the same, but a limited power of attorney as far as you're allowing us to sign a contract with the supplier
Mhm.
at a certain rate or below for a certain term or below on the township's behalf.
Okay.
And the reason
I
we're
understand.
asking for that is that's the best way for me to take advantage of a market that is moving so quickly that if I can't get a rate and bring to you and get it back and have that rate be any good. The suppliers are not,
We got it.
I
yeah.
think I
So,
understand.
but how long is the addendum good for? Indefinitely? This is a permanent,
I don't know. I mean,
You're going to want to take a look at this. This is not a complete version too. There are,
The
facts missing.
the things that are missing are because we are not replacing the MSA. We already have an MSA. That top portion of that is if we were asking them to sign a new MSA, which we are not. Which we could, but we have an MSA in place.
so could we just make this addendum good for like a year or something? And then after that, they have to come back to us again?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't even seen the.
Well, maybe we can
contract,
look
so-
more into it, or do we have to?
So are you asking for action tonight?
I'm asking for action soon,
Soon.
because the markets are down.
Okay, I think we can probably give you that, but I think we need to allow our legal director to
No,
look
that's fine.
at the contract and so on and so forth.
Right.
But the concept I finally understand, and I appreciate your explanation.
All right,
Thanks, Jeff.
thanks.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Joe.
Yep.
First of all, thank you. Do we need to inform the residents that on June the first, your electricity bill is double?
The,
Is there any communication that considering the bills that it's been?
I think, it will be, it is published actually on Apples to Apples. You can go in and look at what current, they have the current rates. Typically, I know like in AES, it was published. Their communities were very aware, and they started calling of what the rates were happening. I would assume that will happen here, that it will make, it made the news there in a big way.
I consider myself very well informed, and this is all brand new news to me. That my electricity is gonna double, already go 2.5 times.
Well,
That's
we'll
quite
know
good
better
to
as
know.
lunch
They
today.
said, my office and everything else. Well, no, but this is not going to go up, this,
Yeah.
you're going from 100 to 250.
Yeah, you'll have a, they have, their options will be in March, and then after March, then they'll be able to figure out exactly what it's gonna be. And if it goes anything like it happened in the AES market, once they had that, once they figured out what it was going to be, that it did get published and people, in that, at least in those communities, and we were in multiple communities in those counties that have that, and trust me, they were aware.
Well, we need it, I personally appreciate what you're saying, I'm just asking, so we're not, everyone just isn't shocked.
Yeah, you don't want to be
We
blindsided.
get shocked when we get the bill.
Well,
Yeah, exactly.
And part of the, if we get this done, you know, the letter, when we redo the program, the opt-out letters will go out. And there'll probably be some shock in that, because we're going from 4.6 to probably something close to 7.
Mm.
You know, hopefully we get, you know, we did 3, but they were in AES, so they're different, but they were all like 6.9.
Yeah.
You know,
We can
now,
simplify your position.
yeah, so it's gonna be uncomfortable. And the fact that it starts June 1st, but you don't get those bills until July.
Yeah.
And June, at least last year, we had 90-degree days, so your air conditioners are running. It's going to be, I know in the AES, I talked to a gentleman that was in the audience. His bill ran between 125 and 150, and his next bill was 400. Wow, so it is, it will be, yeah, people will take it.
Joe, do you have any kind of a tool or mechanism that can compare the rates? So like on any given day, like there's a calculator or something that we could put on our webpage so that residents can see what that rate is as it's moving up and down?
No, we don't have a real time like that.
Okay,
We do have a portal that I will get Tim set up on.
okay,
That he will be, and it's good, and actually would help for comment that she made, is that it will also have all the documents available.
Okay.
So what.
that way we can make this available. We've in the past.
So through that, if you guys wanted to take that and use that to give information, you certainly.
Okay.
could, yes.
Cool, thank you, Joe.
Thank you very
Just
much.
to quickly clear up, so everybody understands, like what we're trying to do is on a higher level, authorize Joe to negotiate the best possible deal on some of this stuff for our residents, but then it's also an opt-out program. So you don't have to be part of it. I mean, if you were to think it's,
I think that's the first C.
yeah, exactly. Right. And I just wanted to make sure everybody understood it's an opt-out. So if you didn't want to be part of it. you
And
don't
what
have
we're
to be.
trying to negotiate is so you don't have the crazy bill in June or July.
All righty, thank you again. We appreciate it. We're going to move on to the next topic. Mr. Morton and Mr. Stewart, I believe, are here from Plangers.
You do?
Hello, gentlemen.
Okay.
Welcome.
I'll get going while we, since we're probably tight on time. Good evening. My name is Jay Stewart with Stewart Land Use. I've got Sam Morton here and Mark Knoll, both with Kleinger's. I used to be with Kleinger's when we started the project. I'm out on my own now for 3 or 4 years now. While we're waiting for the PDF to get going, I'll just start with, you've got copies, or you've had copies for probably a couple of years now of the State Route 125 plan here. Start with, why did we do this? Why did the township, ask us to come in and look at this? At the end of the day, it was to, take some progressive action towards, in those first steps and building blocks of redevelopment of pieces of the corridor. And then secondarily, specifically, we brought in the traffic analysis component of it to understand what we have going on. There's a couple areas in some of these nodes where there's some existing safety and traffic efficiency issues. And then, from a practical standpoint, these are the kinds of studies and data that's very critical when you're going for public financing, particularly at OKI and other programs. Okay. So, the approach we used on this was what I call nodal development and identifying nodes. Okay, development nodes. I like this approach when you have very long corridors like you have here. I will tell you that when you're trying to transform a corridor or redevelop a corridor, it's very challenging. And the longer the corridor you have, the even bigger challenge it is, and the greater amount of time it's going to take. But it can be done. The whole idea with the node approach is you take this long corridor, and at this stage with the beginning plan, and say, okay, where can we focus our efforts? Okay, in the study. Okay, where can we focus? And coming out of with the recommendations we'll go through tonight, where do we put our money? Where do we put our efforts, our staff time? Okay, because it's a very long corridor. So you look at the nodes, and we create the nodes, these areas, and where do we get the best bang for the buck from a redevelopment standpoint? And then do we have any safety issues that we can correct at the same time? Okay, so that was the approach going in, to try to take little bite-sized chunks of this very long corridor. Okay. So with that, what we're going to do is Mark Knoll and Mark is a traffic engineer at Kleinger's. Like I said, we're just going to go through the 4 nodes from a traffic, and then I'm the land use and zoning development guy on this. And then I'll come in and talk about a few things on each node from that standpoint. And then I'm going to finish up just kind of cherry picking some of what I think is more substantial recommendations out of the plan. So we'll start with node 1.
There we go. Good evening. I'm Mark Knoll with the Kleinger's Group. And I'll be presenting the traffic portion of the study. As Jay said, once we divided the area up into nodes, we identified the intersections within each node that would be likely most impacted by the development or the potential development within those nodes. I'll just give you a kind of a brief overview of the process first. I won't do this with every node, but once we identified those key intersections, we collected traffic count data at those intersections, and then we identified what the development or redevelopment potential was within those nodes. Then we used nationally available tools and studies to estimate, what additional traffic would be generated by those new developments or redevelopments. Then we identified, okay, what type of access to State Route 125 and the intersecting roadways do we need to adequately and safely serve these developments? Once we did that, we also looked at are there opportunities to provide some internal connectivity between various developments so that not every parcel has direct access out onto State Route 125. We also did some looking at intersections as well. The primary one is the Lewis Road, White Oak intersection. It's a odd alignment and configuration there, which leads to some traffic problems. So we looked at that one very closely from the safety perspective. So once we had all that additional traffic on there on the network, we did capacity analyses with highway capacity software, looking at these key intersections to see how do they operate, without this development, and how do they operate with the development to get an idea of what the impact actually is. And from that, we came up with the recommendations that we are presenting here tonight. So for node, this is node 1 that you're looking at now. You can see the blue arrows that kind of go into each node. There's one intersection down there, one driveway on Merwin 10 Mile, and then a couple of driveways directly out onto 125 with a little bit of internal connectivity in between those developments. The primary recommendation here for node 1 is to cul-de-sac Lang Road. And right now that Lang Road extends and intersects State Route 125, eliminating that, or I guess cul-de-sacing Lang Road, and that frees that portion up that currently connects to 125 for future development, and eliminates the potential for cut through traffic, which is happening to some degree now. So yes.
Talking about it, looking at that small picture isn't all of you at all. If you just put one screen for someone in this kind of point,
Do you have
what you're referring to.
do you have a laser pointer?
Yeah, I apologize. I did bring a laser pointer actually, and it does not work. Okay.
Well, just so you know, we do intend to have a workshop on this. So this isn't, I mean, this is just the first. We're trying to do a quick overview so that, we did this a couple of years ago, and I'll explain why later, why it's taken so long to get it to this phase, but we will do a deeper dive, and you'll get to see it in more depth.
So I do apologize for that. And I wasn't aware until today that a laser pointer doesn't work on a TV screen. So, but that's node 1 from a traffic summary perspective. I'll turn it back over to Jay.
So so each node had several maps, and these are called redevelopment maps. Just real quickly, I'll explain this once. On this one node, you'll see the orange arrows that typically calls for some type of a new curb cut, or it could be some sort of public or usually internal private roadway. The blue circles are what Mark said. Those are the key intersections that we need to key in on and protect in the node, serving the node. The parcels are color coded. The kind of that peach color is I call it a stabilized area. I just made that up. All that means is that in discussing each node with the steering committee, that we wanted to look at the properties that we thought were worth salvaging, quite frankly, that maybe did not have redevelopment potential. Typically, that meant that was a newer development or a newer building. Okay. And so what we did, I'm sorry, the green is the redevelopment potential, everything else. Okay. So most of these nodes have green. Okay. What we did is when we identified the 4 nodes and we went along parcel lines, we were very specific about the area with the idea that you may want to put a zoning overlay district over the one or more of these nodes in the future. That's one of the recommendations. Once we identified the 4 nodes, we went back and we tapped one of Kleiner's senior private development civil engineers, David Wright. His expertise is master planning, whether it's a 10-acre site or a 100-acre mixed use development site and everything in between. And so basically we started there, and we said, Dave, let's talk through each one of these. And I want you to basically he works mostly, almost exclusively for developers. And he said, hey, help us master plan this node area, kind of a best case scenario. And so that's what we did for each node. It's like, okay, in a perfect world, if we were to develop this out, in a perfect way, this is how it would be. This would give us the most potential for redevelopment. Okay. It would minimize the amount of infrastructure. Okay. We're sort of thinking like a developer at that point. So again, I'll go to the recommendations at the end, but again, I just wanted to go over that for each node. That's how we kind of did the redevelopment maps. And again, here on node 1, again, as Mark said, the big takeaway is the idea of cul-de-sacing Lang Road. And then, at that point, what's Lang today coming off of 125, that becomes a short service road into development parcels. Okay. And then, right south of Skyline, obviously you'd punch in, a curb cut, to access. This node doesn't have a huge amount of redevelopment potential, but again, it had enough to make the list. One last thing on all these nodes, and this is typical of this kind of rural type of corridor. Most of these parcels in the nodes aren't that deep in terms of how far they sit back. Some are, as you'll see in a couple later nodes, but they're not super deep. That doesn't mean we can't redevelop them, but it does, preclude certain types of developments and certainly the larger developments. The other unique, land use thing going on in every single node is that you'll see in this one, like all 4 of them, the node boundaries in the back sides, on the south side of these node boundaries, are almost exclusively all single family backyards or side yards. Okay. And again, that's very typical of a state route 125. You can plop that in any county in Ohio, and you're probably going to have this kind of arrangement. So it's just something we have to deal with. And it doesn't mean we can't redevelop these. So go on to node 2.
So this is node 2 with, it's kind of in the area of Buxton Road. There's the McDonald's down there. We looked at, this site in particular has a little bit deeper area to work with. And you can see again, some of the access points out onto 125 towards the western end. That I think a lot of that is somewhat newer development, and a lot of the existing access serves that area well. It's towards the eastern end that we've kind of focused on and provided some internal roadway connectivity there between the McDonald's area over to Franz Road. And then that internal roadway connection serves the properties along it. So aside from the internal roadway connection, we also identified the opportunity for a new traffic signal at State Route 125 and Franz Road, which would help serve that eastern portion of the development.
All right, so for the node 2, in terms of redevelopment opportunities map, again, you can see the parcels in green. That's what we're suggesting have the highest degree of redevelopment potential. We called this one Pierce Point, because, the anchor of this one, if Skyline was the anchor, if you will, of node 1, this is clearly the anchor of this node. It's got the cinema, and it's got some of that, retail commercial, development out in front of the cinema, which is relatively new, some of the newest, developments you have on the corridor. So again, frankly, that's a big reason why this area made it into the list of 4 nodes. Okay. It's got some momentum going. Okay. It's got some decent size of parcels to it, in contrast to node number 1. I think a node like this, much like you'll see in number 4, it opens yourself up to potential mixed use developments where they typically need a little bit, bigger footprint of land area. Another, and again, looking at the orange here, again, that is a suggested future access road. Again, why is that there? It's to centrally locate a main intersection out at the McDonald's access point, and it's also going to open up the most amount of land in terms of if you were to put in new infrastructure. Now, you do have a challenge in this node, not that it kills the node, of course, but you can see there in the red dashed lines, those are overhead power lines with a fairly decent size overhead power line easement. You also have, you can see the topography lines on here. You have some topo going on towards the back end of this. Again, it doesn't mean we can't develop any of this. It may limit some of how we would lay out, or a developer would lay this out. So again, this and number 4 are the 2 largest nodes you're dealing with. And frankly, this one from in the development continuum, or time frame, this is maybe the most advanced. It's a combination of the closest to 275, where the Walmart anchored number 4 is the furthest node away. So it's got that location. And again, how corridors develop out, I mean, you can see the same thing up at, all over the place, but State Route 28. Okay, we just finished up their land use plan there, and a lot of discussion about talking about the incremental movement of development, kind of common sense, away from the interstate. Well, Goshen up on 28, they're starting to see trickles of more development. Okay, so again, node 2 closer to 275, probably one of your better opportunities for some redevelopment activity. It's already started effectively. So node 3.
So moving on to node 3, this is probably the biggest impact from a traffic perspective, just with the existing configuration of Lewis Road and White Oak Road. Those 2 roads kind of come up, and you can see the angle they're coming at, and they intersect each other just before 125. So they both have a stop sign. They're just south of 125, and then you proceed on to the 125 intersection, and you have a stop sign there as well. So it's just an awkward configuration. We looked at this this node in particular long and hard, and looked at rerouting Lewis Road as it's shown here in this drawing. And White Oak Road then would essentially tee into the realigned Lewis Road. And then Lewis Road would then intersect 125 directly across from Bristol Lake with a new traffic signal at that intersection. You can see that realigned roadway then provides access to properties on both sides of it. With really just the one additional access point for the development directly onto 125. Let's see. Also, I just wanted to point out too that in general, these were the main recommendations from each of the development nodes. We also looked at the 125 corridor in general and identified that coordinated signal timings would help traffic flow through the network much better. We understand that ODOT was actually already in the process of doing an upgrade to this while we were doing this study.
So for node 3, from a redevelopment standpoint, I think out of the 4 nodes, if memory serves me, this was the one that maybe has the least amount of potential for redevelopment. I always say that because it's on the smaller side. And I think, a big reason, or one of the main reasons that this area made it into a node in the plan in the first place was really to, look at first steps of correcting what Mark just talked about, correcting or helping a safety and or efficient or inefficient traffic, flow situation. That being said, from a redevelopment standpoint, there is some opportunity, although smaller. I will, again, one of the recommendations that applies to all 4 nodes is, really being prudent about access management as much as you can. Again, as a township, your hands are a little bit tied. So, some access management tools you have to default to the county plan, but certainly once you get down to like a development plan review process, development by development coming into, zoning commission, you do have some, authority. So again, I'll just use this as an example. In all these nodes, as is the case in any older corridor like this, you basically had piecemeal development. A lot of times it's single family homes or small commercial. And virtually every parcel has a curb cut. Sometimes they have multiple curb cuts. And as most of you probably know, if you don't know, part of the successful redevelopment of a corridor, any corridor of any size, has to be some pretty tight control on access management. And what that means is you start talking about limiting curb cuts, when you have the authority to do so. So when a new development comes in, developer wants 2, maybe you give them 1. Okay, if that makes sense, and requiring parallel access roads, so the idea is that, over time, get rid of these, cut, and then that's another reason why you see the blue circles. Okay, we're trying to start steering everybody, township and developers towards, we want traffic to be coming in and using those main intersections. That's going to create a better, more efficient flow on the entire corridor, not just the node. So that's node 3. We'll move on. Well, actually, node 4. Node 4, that's right. We did not do traffic, for node 4. The reason being, again, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Freeman, but I think we maybe had started the project already, and we were going to do traffic for all, up to 3 nodes. We threw node 4 in, and we just addressed the land use and zoning. Okay, because I was going to, bump up the contract price, and frankly, as I said earlier, node 4 here is the most eastern, farthest away from 275, although you do have a decent sized anchor in Walmart there, which is substantial, and that serves as a semi-regional draw, in and of itself. Looking at that node developing out, that's in theory, that would be the last one to develop because it's the furthest away from 275. That's the biggest reason. So with that being said, didn't look at traffic. We did look at the usual things on redevelopment. Again, you can see a couple parcels in terms of stabilized, most of this in the green, as in the other green areas of the corridor nodes. You've got just a bunch of older buildings that have seen better days and that are at some point ripe for some type of redevelopment that can be more productive and useful and creating more revenue for the community. Okay, that's the goal here. So again, you'll see in this node that most of these parcels are somewhat shallow. As I said in the beginning, again, Walmart's pretty deep, but everything's shallow. So again, you don't see many orange arrows in terms of new infrastructure going in. It's really getting off of 125 and then going east or west, into the actual developments themselves. So again, that's number 4. Again, we just threw that in once we started the project, since we were looking at the other ones. To start to preliminary take a look way down there. Lastly, those are the 4 nodes. And then before we get to any questions you may have, I'm just gonna, like I said, I kind of handpicked some recommendations that I'll just run through. And again, I should have said in the beginning, I mean, the number one thing I hope you do, and the idea is that you do something, once you hopefully adopt the plan, that you do something with it, that you don't let it sit on a shelf collecting dust. And again, that's at least from my approach, who kind of put the plan together or the recommendations on this type of items. I wanted to give you something that was very practical and very, kind of, boots on the ground. What are the next steps? Okay. And that's always my approach on these types of plans. So with that being said, there's several things, and I've mentioned this during the planning exercise, there's several things you can be doing like right now, in parallel, multiple things at the same time that frankly don't take any money, no cost. It may take some staff time. Okay. There's certainly the infrastructure. Those are some big ticket items, and that's probably where you're going to want to get in line at OKI and in other areas to get some funding help. But anyway, applying zoning overlay district, I think that applies to all 4 of these, putting a special overlay zoning district that has special standards that apply to to these 4 nodes. Okay. And that could be architectural design guidelines. Again, you've got a decent set of those already. Okay. But is there anything else you want to look at? Sign standards. I'd look at land use, and you may want to clamp down on land use. For example, at least in these nodes, maybe beyond the nodes, but you may want to start, limiting certain land uses that are not conducive to a long-term successful corridor. Not to pick on auto-related services, but that's the classic example of, and again, you have a bunch on here, but particularly if you go to Butler County, like Route 4 or Colerain, those are the two classic examples of, over time, you just get a ton of auto-related, all things with wheels, from selling to servicing and everything in between. Okay. Those typically don't give off very much revenue. Some of them can take up very large amounts of land. So again, from an overlay district, you may want to take a little bit more prudent look at land uses and really just allow the ones that are really going to be productive for the community. Mixed use development, that's a big idea here in terms of long-term, particularly in nodes 2 and 4, where you have a little bit bigger parcels. Particularly we talked about, the plan talks about, possible townhome and other residential, components as part of a mixed use development. The plan does not say, hey, go let in, 100 unit, market rate apartment complexes. Quite the opposite. It says, hey, if you're going to allow, and you should be open to residential in some of the bigger nodes here, when they are part of a mixed use development, when they are a component of other pieces of a development, from the same developer, and those other pieces of the development, commercial, retail, office, medical office, they're producing revenue. That's when, I think it makes sense to open the door to considering residential here. Encouraging adaptive reuse projects. That's basically where you take a existing building, okay, that has seen better days, and you reuse it. You basically, you dress up the outside, usually the inside. Again, up to, just because we just finished this up, if you've been on 28 recently, if you've seen, it was a former Jiffy Lube type of, it was on old 28. It's Hail the Biscuit, all Hail the Biscuit. They basically turned the Jiffy Lube into this hip little, biscuit, lunch and dinner place, okay, and breakfast. So that's a great example. And I think for any corridor, especially 125, that should be a part of your arsenal. And again, how do we get there? Look at your zoning resolution and kind of some, overlay district things to incentivize and make it more flexible for those kind of projects. Access management, I talked about that on a couple nodes. That is a very huge one, frankly. And that really has to happen for this to be successful. The last page of the plan talks about some economic development tools. Nothing groundbreaking there. I think the takeaway there is that if you've got some of these nodes where you want to get proactive and aggressive with, I would go ahead and put either a CRA district and or a springing TIF, tax increment financing district on there, and have it be ready to go. And that's the overall idea of this plan, is to what can we do to be ready to go as much as possible while we're trying to get possibly some infrastructure improvements in kind of your node number 1 where you really want to focus on. What can we do? Last thing is, you may want to consider strategic land acquisitions. Okay, in terms of, let's say I'll just pick node number 2, because it's a big one and it's closer to 275. Let's say that the board makes a policy to, if a piece of land comes up and it's priced reasonably and it's strategic in terms of redevelopment, that's been used by communities for many, many years now, to where they go and purchase that, and it's called land banking. Most of us have heard that. You sit on that parcel, or maybe it's got existing tenants where you rent it out and you wait. Sometimes the communities do their own developments and they hire a preferred developer and go through that process. But a lot of times, a developer, comes in, they do their thing, they do that every day. And at least you hold some of the pieces of the puzzle in terms of land, and if it's strategic. So again, I would certainly be at least considering that and be looking for when opportunities may come up in the nodes. So actually very quick, believe it or not, through all that, there's a lot of information in the plan. I guess I can't speak for Mark, but he'd probably be fine with this, but from my standpoint, if you have questions, Eddie and Alan, they've got my number. I'd be happy to talk to you on the telephone or meet with you to go over more detail. There's a lot in here. There's a lot of I think good stuff that can be done, you know, even soon, to get the framework and building pieces, you know, in place. So that's the quick overview, and I guess we'll take any questions if you have them.
Yes, thank you, sir. Well, good evening. I'm Carl Hartman, a 42-year resident of Pierce Township at 3478 Holly Ridge. I think I wish to commend the board here for addressing this corridor, because some 25 years ago, we recognized the fact that there's a lot of accidents on that road. There's an accident between 275 and Hamlet, average of 1 accident a day. And so there definitely needs to be a safety component of this study also that gets involved. And I also represent Super Sam. You know, although this is involved with the redevelopment of areas, we want to make sure that this study and the end results do not have a negative impact upon existing businesses. And that's Super Sam's concern. It's his life savings. It's his day-to-day putting bread on the table. And quite frankly, it is his retirement. And I've enjoyed working with Sam now for several years, and he's a good man in that regard. Other things I have, and I'm sure I don't expect answers tonight, but hopefully, is there going to be a public involvement meeting, a public input?
That's earlier when they began, I stated that we're going to have a workshop. So we intend to, this is just the introduction phase.
A lot of
We'll
these
come back out.
projects you do this is, and one of my other questions, is ODOT been involved in any of this?
Yes.
Has Union Township and Batavia Township?
Union Township has not reviewed it. We've discussed it with Union Township. Batavia Township is aware of it as well.
Okay, because you know, this border is not necessarily the just south side of 125. And so that, and is there a time frame? And is there a budget? Is there funding sources available to make these improvements?
Well, that's actually a lot of different questions that you just asked. And as you know, because you have a previous life as the county engineer, each one of those has a decision tree off of it.
And
all
that
this
also affects the implementation of it.
exactly. So essentially, all this is a 30,000-foot view.
I agree.
And so in the old days, we would have called it the major investment study. And so that's what this piece is. Then as we start to come back down a little bit closer, then we start talking about it's their possibility to do what we need to do without construction, without cost, without any grants or any additional any additional financial components. That's where we'll talk with Eddie and we'll talk with the people inside the node and try to work on potential overlays that can address some of the needed changes. Then we'll start to look at some of these nodes from a what do we have to build perspective.
Okay, when will the public involvement meeting be? Is there a public involvement plan?
We just said that, yeah.
When?
Well, that's yet to
You
be
will have a
determined.
public
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
and so therefore, as the plan progresses, I would like to be on the list of receiving PDFs on the plans that go through.
You?
Any problem with that?
No, we're not, no, not for you.
Professionally, you know, I've had a few years in this business.
I'll let you have this right now if you want.
That's fine.
No, we yes,
It's still draft form, I saw.
yeah, and I'll tell everybody here the reason why. So we started this process and
How many years ago?
we started it in a little village or little town named Amelia
Before that?
decided they
Okay.
wanted to go off the map. So we did the piece on our side of 125
West of it.
up to Amelia. And then on the other side of Amelia, you'll note that there's not a fifth node, which there really kind of is a phantom fifth node, which is where the premier property is. So essentially starting at, I don't know, White Oak headed to Huntsman's Trace is kind of a phantom fifth node. And so we stopped, we considered what we were dealing with, and we didn't know where Amelia was going to come down. And so that's why it stayed in draft form. Most of the assumptions that are in there still are valid. And as we start to do some of the public involvement and kicking the tires, if any of those have changed, like for instance, we do have an overlay district inside of Amelia. So some of that's already started to happen. ODOT has I think Jay, or I think maybe you might have mentioned, ODOT has now put in, will be in the process of putting in modernized traffic
The
signals.
signal,
Right.
re-signalization.
Right, so that'll go from what about Merwin 10 Mile to Church Street, is that what they said? What's that? Yeah, so that's actually starting, it's recommended in this study as well. So some of those pieces are.
Back in 94, we had a traffic study of the corridor as it relates to safety and the number of accidents.
Right.
And we had a number of improvements that we've made in there, the Buxton road, McMahon Road realignment with Merwin 10 Mile down at, we did the Park and Rides was part of a program that we came up with. Now it's been basically inactive for a few years, but our intent at the time was to proceed on these intersections as from a safety aspect. But I think it's very wise of the township to look at a redevelopment. We're only concerned about negative impact upon Super Sam, quite frankly.
Well, and I think that's something that's really important on economic development, that you almost have to, pardon me for borrowing your term, be like a doctor, first do no harm.
Right.
But if we can do something that's holistic, that gets more volume through that corridor, or protects the volume as it currently stands for traffic, then that's something I think we should put on the table. And this kind of addresses that, but it also addresses construction.
All right, good.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hartman. Thank you.
Tag, by the way.
I know, before we're done.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen from Clangers. Is there any further question? Gentlemen, anything else? Okay. All righty. Thank you again. Have a good evening. All right, now we are at the point where we will entertain public input, public discussion. Once again, if you haven't signed in, please do so. And then when you come up to the podium to address the board, please state your name and your address for the record. Thank you. Anyone? Okay.
I got a big mess. I'm Joe Mulligan. Been here 24 years. This is actually focused on the chief. First of all, your staff does a tremendous job. Thank you for everything you do. But I did notice something that's going to be a big concern of mine. The intersection of Bradbury and White Oak, and with all those three streets, that four-way stop sign. If you could control that a bit more, or have a police officer watch where that's traffic. You know, there are stop signs there, not kind of stop signs. I had listened this morning that happened at 8. I was behind these cars, but a gentleman was very impatient. In a little small car, but behind a pickup truck. Pickup truck wanted to turn left up White Oak. The little car got in the wide lane, the straight lane, right turn lane, and turned left in front of the patient. So just having a car around every once in a while, I don't want you to sit down like thousands of tickets, much as we want to. But we do need to have some, a little bit more. People just rolling was just a bit more than I would like to see. I think we're going to think of an accident there. It's room. Yes. Okay. Thank you, Derek.
Thank you so much. Is there any further public input? Okay. Thank you again. All righty, let's move forward with departmental updates. Chief Brocksterman.
So I don't have anything further other than recognizing the Ohio needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Colonel. Okay. Okay, fire and EMS, Chief Wright.
Of Ohio House Bill 509. It was actually signed by Governor DeWine in January. So it's part of a larger bill. They're trying to streamline a lot of licensure in Ohio to boost the job market. But one of the components was that affected fire and EMS. So we currently have a continuing ed training site through the state, as most fire departments do, a lot of the hospitals. And this bill effectively has canceled that. So later this year, that will expire. The state will be removing those certificates. So the Ohio Fire Chiefs Association is actively working to try to get that fixed. So at a time where costs and things are at a soaring pace, that will significantly boost or increase our training expenses. Our continuing ed's mandated by Ohio law for all of our folks. And currently we can achieve most of that through doing in-house training. So if this stands the way it is, we'll have to send all of our folks out to get all the continuing ed hours. They did reduce the hours a little bit, but I think for a paramedic, you're going from 86 to 76 or 73 hours every 3 years. So it's a lot of time we'll have to send folks out when we're already struggling to fill schedules. And I just wanted you to be aware of that we're actively working on it and hopefully we can come to some kind of resolution. The other brief thing is our outdoor tornado warning sirens. Have been a little problematic the last couple months. The monthly test was canceled beginning of the month due to the freezing cold temperatures. We did have 4 sirens that were inoperable when they were last tested in December. 2 of the 4 have been repaired. They had fuse issues. One had a motor that was seized that's been rebuilt and it's currently being repaired. So we'll have that one back up. There's a 4 siren in the Still Meadow area. That siren was put in before the agreement was in place with Still Meadow Country Club. So we kind of have a redundant siren over there. So the one in Still Meadow is working. So we're going to look into the other siren and see whether it needs to come down, if it's exceeded its useful life, or if it needs to be repaired. But just wanted to give you an update in case anybody asks.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Mr. Kohler, Service Department.
I'd mostly like to recognize my staff, but in particular 2 people. They have really stepped up with picking up when somebody is off. We have a mechanic that's been off for quite a while now, and Jake Over and Mike Castile with repairing our big trucks. We had a lot of breakdowns during snow removal and so on and so forth. And I mean, they were tired, but they stayed with it and they got the trucks fixed and then went back out and did the routes on top of that. So they're really great people to have around. They're special. So just wanted to recognize them. And then the Coal Road where they did the current plug wall, they're having a lot of trees from where they piered it. They cut the backside of the roots and the trees are really falling over. So we're working on getting prices, and they're falling over across the creek. So we're getting prices, or Clingers is getting prices on getting those trees removed. So before they cause any damage to the property on the other side of the street or cause a backup in the creek. So.
Okay, well, on your earlier point, thank you for commending your staff. I think they take their cues from you. So that says a lot about you, actually, John, So I think you're doing a great job.
It's all them.
It really does.
I'm going to be honest. I think they do it in spite of him, actually.
Perhaps so. Okay. Parks and Green Space Committee, Mr. Dressy, are you going to speak to us about that? Good evening.
All right, this is Doug Dressing, 994 Eagles Landing, alternate chair of the Park Committee. Just some updates from our meeting last week. The Easter egg hunt, which we discussed, last month, will happen on April 1st at 10 a.m. We're going to start the process of filling the eggs on Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Seeking volunteers to help with that process. First one is this Saturday, the 11th. So if anybody has some free time on Saturday late morning, stop by. Donna Can will put you to work filling eggs, and we will do that until it's completed. So we'll do it every Saturday and until it's completed. If it gets done this Saturday, great. If not, we'll reconvene on the 18th. So anyone who's looking for something to do Saturday morning, that's 10 a.m. here at the Township building. Movies in the park. We are planning 2 movies in the park. We did settle on the movies. We're going to do the animated feature Up for May 20th and Despicable Me for September 16th. So Tim, we do need to get the licensing in place with Swank Motion Pictures so we can start advertising the movies for that. So I think Danny, I think you have that information. If you need anything, just shoot an email, let us know. Okay, that's for fun, what's promising. Okay, great. Okay. Let's see, coming out of, we're trying to, plan events and that type of thing. We do have the summer concert. We did kind of settle on Don Barner Band for August 26th. Tim, I just forwarded you the contact information from that so we can start that process. But events at Spencer Shank, there's a lot of discussion last meeting about, wanting to get events kind of spread out within the parks, within the township. And so, obviously there are some challenges with having events, with lack of facilities and that type of thing. So, we'll continue to work on those, issues from a funding standpoint to mitigate that. But, you had asked that we kind of do some brainstorming, which we've done. And actually, Mark Can is kind of spearheading a lot of things and a lot of idea generation, which is great. So, some things that kind of kicked around as a potential car show, like maybe a car show coffee if it's in the morning, or car show ice cream social, or on an ice, afternoon or evening in the summer. Could be something that could be fun, especially at Spencer Shank. We'd want to do something in the summer, I think, so that we could use the grounds to, park vehicles, whether it be car show, but also for attendees. So that's been a consideration. One thing we did talk about also was with the improvements happening at Grove Park with the new playground equipment coming in. That's going to wrap up mid-June is kind of what we're thinking at this point. But we suggested that there be some type of reopening event at Grove Park when that's complete, perhaps early July timeframe, potentially incorporated ice cream social or something like that along with that. But would be something good to do with the new playground equipment wrapping up around that timeframe. Some other things that or potential options we could look at, for Spencer Shank, just because there are some big areas. There is a remote control airplane club based out of Eastport Lake area. So that's a potential that could be something fun, there. There's also something through League of Animal Welfare, maybe perhaps through your connection to SCPA, but do some type of shelter dog walk or something like that, an event, and that could really happen at most of our parks, whether it's Locust Corner, Spencer Shank, Ork Road, where they could bring some shelter dogs, volunteers can come up, give them some exercise and some attention. So also looking at a potential, this may be, kind of a longer term thing to look at, but potential circus opportunity, kind of on a small scale, would be through Burkus Brewing, I guess has some operations in that realm. So Alan's had some contacts there, and kind of looking at those potentials for future events. Then as far as Tim emailed that we did get the application. The next round of Claremont County Park grant comes out. It's due at the end of March 31st is the due date for the application. Some potentials we talked about, probably I think the one that leading that would be shade structures for the benches over at Locust Corner Park, the playground. I've had a lot of residents mention that, there's just not enough shade there. And we planted some trees, but obviously it's going to take time before that would actually benefit those. So I think that's one direction where to go. I guess just a little concern with, I think we have to have 3 bids for that. If we can look at those documents a little bit more, Tim, and understand that. But I'm going to do research on potential products, but we think that would be something that could fall within that grant opportunity. Basically, under $10,000 doesn't require a township match. If it's between 10 and 20, it would require
like a 50% match. I forget exactly what it is, on that grant opportunity, but those are, some things we need to kind of move fast on, so we can get the application done by the end of the month. So, Tim, it put on here, the Parks Master Plan prioritization process. When we updated the master plan a couple of years ago, the group, we kind of, and stemming from like the meeting we had at Grove Park with the residents and kind of understanding, getting feedback from the community. We looked at, holistically trying to develop priorities, things that are big needs, on the list of priorities is restrooms at Spencer Shank, has been on there. Obviously some of these items from a prioritization standpoint require significant funds to raise to do that. So, we're starting to kind of relook at that list, every month and kind of check off the things that were on the priority list of projects that are in progress. For example, the tennis courts, ball fields, that's going on right now at Locust Corner Park, as well as playgrounds at Grove. And so, we're just starting to revisit that every month and have discussions around, grant opportunities. There's a few that are coming up here early in the summer, May, June timeframe that, we may be able to look at some of these other opportunities to raise funds. So, any questions, comments?
I'll make a comment. I think it was great of you that was a good idea to suggest an ice cream social, maybe at the time of the opening or ribbon cutting or whatever we're going to call it at Grove Park. That might be something to coordinate Chief Broxterman with, those kits we've had, those identity kits we passed out last year. I thought that was neat. And, we could look for corporate sponsorship. And if we are unable to identify and give somebody else a chance to do it,
Sure.
I'm happy to do it again for the second year. But I think that was a very nice suggestion. And I've got a suggestion for whatever event we choose to have over there. We could have a Dunk the Trustees, booth or booths, so that everybody can take their frustrations out on us. And I'll be the first to volunteer, because I'm sure by the end of this term, this year, y'all will be frustrated with me as your chairman. But thank you very much. Good work. Thank you so much.
All right. I guess, Michelle, do you have anything to add?
I think it's fine. You might have maybe understood it. You could talk about we had a custom meeting at Spencer Shank to get some ideas over there.
But yeah, good point. Thanks for bringing that up. We thought that there's discussion around, obviously the restrooms there, discussion around, pickleball courts, is Mr. Shank a candidate for a dedicated pickleball courts? And that we had good attendance at the Grill event a couple of years ago, getting feedback from the residents. We thought it'd be a good idea for Spencer Shank to do a similar event, this summer. Maybe we can do that around, one of these events here. But just try and get feedback from the community that's directly adjacent to the park there. Can help, the Parks Committee, help trustees understand what they feel needs are there.
Well, I think that session at Grove Park was actually very productive.
Oh, yeah.
And many of the recommended improvements are being made.
Oh,
So I think anytime we can sit and talk to people and get their thoughts and their desires down on paper, we can start to try to tick them off, if not in that way. But we'll be able to go through and prioritize and get them done.
Okay. Thanks for that reminder.
Sounds like a great idea, taking it on the road. Thank you. Okay. Next we have planning and zoning, Mr. McCarthy.
So I have two items. The first is on the land use plan, just a brief status update. We've published the draft existing conditions, posted them on the website. So we're collecting comments and feedback on those items. So that's basically the first half of the document. The second portion that is undergoing right now is the second half of the document, where we just had our first public open house last night at the library. We had a really good showing, a lot of really good feedback. The second open house will be tomorrow night at 5 o'clock until 7 here at 950 Locust Corner. So again, anyone who attended is welcome to come back. And then it'll be all the same information, but anyone who missed the first opportunity last night is obviously welcome to come tomorrow as well. So that should be a good event as well. Once we have that information, this is where I'll need a little bit of feedback from you guys, just on what your preference might be. But once we have that data, that'll basically be all of the information gathering and kind of synthesis with the land use committee at that point. So we'll be ready to have perhaps a work session or multiple. And staff's recommendation would be that we attempt a work session, a joint work session, if you would like, with the zoning commission and board of trustees in March. So the zoning commission has a standing meeting the first Tuesday of every month. And of course, this board has a standing meeting the second Wednesday of every month. So either of those days would be advisable. If you're interested in pursuing it that way. If we have a joint meeting, we would generally most likely still be on target for adoption in April.
I think it's a great idea.
Okay. Do you have a preference for the first Tuesday? That would be the zoning commission's meeting night. Or we could go for the Wednesday. We could do an option 1, option 2, of course, just to make sure we have a quorum.
I don't have a preference, gentlemen.
Well, either their meeting or our meeting.
Yes.
I think their meeting makes a lot more sense.
Okay.
You know, a lot of other stuff.
So have 2 separate meetings. The joint meeting on the 7th and then our regularly scheduled meeting on the 8th.
I would think so.
I'm fine with that.
That
Okay.
sound good to you?
Great. Yeah. All right. I'll get it scheduled. The second item that I have, probably shouldn't speak too much to it. I'll defer to our law director on it. It just pertains to the legal actions that are ongoing with Legendary Run, and then of course one with Pond Run as well.
Thank you, Mr. McCarthy. With respect to the Legendary Run property, as you know, we filed a complaint in the Claremont County Common Police Court. The defendant property owners did not answer the complaint within the time prescribed, so we have moved for default judgment against them. With that motion, the court will set a hearing at which the property owners will be invited to attend. If they do not attend and continue not to answer, then we anticipate default judgment will be granted, and then we will have a hearing on damages. So that's kind of the process going on with Legendary Run. With respect to Pond Run, the property owner defendant answered within the time period prescribed. So we are going to have a case management conference with the court to set up a schedule moving forward. The court hasn't set that conference yet, but that is coming down the pipeline with respect to this answer, which just happened. I received it either yesterday or Monday. I think it was filed on Friday. So that's where we're moving with that complaint.
Can you please explain what happens there?
With respect to which property?
28, 25 Pond Run.
So with respect to the case management conference, so the court is going to set the deadlines, discovery deadlines, and then the hearing date for the injunction and the damages hearing. So we'll be entitled to get some, court sanctioned information from the property owner. He will be entitled to do the same, and then we'll have a hearing with the court. I don't know yet what the court's scheduling will be with that, because I don't know if the court's deadlines or timelines are looking at. It's going to be particular to the judge and their current docket, but we'll know after this court case management conference what kind of fast track we're on with this. And we assume, since it's just an injunction hearing as opposed to a full on, litigation schedule, it'll be much faster than normal litigation.
When I called the county, they said that they will not issue permits. But he's back there building every single day. That house is.
Right, and I think the county has issued a recent, or Mr. McCarthy can speak to this. I know the county has since issued, since the time of our filing of the complaint, the new admon. I don't want to guess about what they've issued, but other paperwork has come out.
Yeah, to my knowledge, and I won't get too far into it because it's not really necessarily our direct purview, but I believe that there are permits filed for the driveway, for instance, that was installed. And I know that their inspector has also been out to the site regarding the structure and has been back on the site working with the property owner. As far as what those details are, I'm not entirely clear.
That concludes the litigation.
Well, at least the report anyway.
Report, not litigation.
Okay. Mr. McCarthy, was that the end of your report?
It is. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. All righty, Mr. Williams, administration.
Yes, briefly, Mr. Chairman, happy to report that we did receive the demolition permit actually this morning from the county for the home at 45 Maple Street. And as I understand it, Mr. Kohler could probably give more information, but if the weather allows us next week, the start of next week, we'll begin demolition, and he's anticipating about a 4-day process. We are going to have some dumpsters delivered out there on Monday, and we have notified our friends at Batavia Township that we're going to be starting on that soon. So that hazardous condition should be rectified by the end of next week. Again, weather contingent. I don't know if Mr. Kohler wanted to add anything to that or not. And then
no, okay.
And then secondly, just and I think I've been in contact with each of you individually, but and working hard on the employee luncheon. Chief Brocksterman has been very helpful in that process. We did meet with one potential vendor. I'm currently exploring another one that would give us at least a couple of options ultimately for the trustees to choose. Our goal is to try to have that accomplished, that luncheon, by the end of March. We want to wait until the end of March just to make sure that snow season is behind us, so we don't lose some of our staff potentially during the luncheon that we have, as I understand has happened in the past a few times. And that concludes my report at this point.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Williams. Old business, Administrator Williams.
Yes, sir. Administrator Tim Williams requests a motion for resolution 2022-049, a resolution revising the employee personnel policies and procedures manual for Pierce Township. I believe at this point, we're pretty well finalized on this. There was a question at the January meeting one regarding the revision date on that document. And it was just an error from our consultant that he had not updated it, but also he provided a 1.5-page summary of all the changes that have been made. And just one other thing I'll note is that if you recall from our work session, there were several items that were discussed, and it was ultimately decided that those items should be addressed as part of a pay and classification system. So those aren't currently incorporated in this final product that we're sending to you for consideration today to adopt. And on that vein, we did get from our current consultant a price quote, but I know we need more than that. So I'm trying to work through my schedule to find 1 or 2 more quotes as well and bring those to you. So my goal is by March to hopefully have at least a couple, if not 3 quotes for that process and a consultant that we could recommend to you.
Okay. There's a request for a motion on the floor.
So moved.
Seconded.
Roll call.
Mr. Kelly.
Yes.
Mr. Freeman.
Yes.
Mr. Campbell.
Yes. Okay, the first item of new business I'm going to bring up, and I made some prepared comments. I'll try to make it reasonably short. But a couple of weeks ago, as many of you know, we became aware as a township through a television news story that potentially 2 wells monitoring groundwater at the former Beck George coal plant property were either damaged or missing for several months in 2022. These wells are an important monitoring feature of the plant, and specifically with respect to testing for contaminants in groundwater and measuring the water levels to determine whether coal ash residuals are potentially impacting our drinking water supply. Although the former plant owner notified the Ohio EPA of these issues, neither Pierce Township nor Claremont County were made aware of these issues. If what has been described is accurate, and we here as a board are neither judge, jury, nor executioner, this creates potentially significant concern, as groundwater contamination could potentially have multi-generational impacts on Pierce Township and Claremont County citizens. Obviously, we have fiduciary responsibility to our citizens, and we're obligated to act with great prudence. For the aforementioned reasons, I hereby motion that our administrator be instructed to prepare and send a letter to the Ohio EPA, as well as the Ohio Public Utilities Commission, requesting that Pierce Township be advised when matters involving the Beckjord Coal Plant remediation are brought to the attention of the respective agencies. And should this motion pass, I'll give you this, Mrs. Schwei, and then you can go from what I've prepared. So I have made the motion. If there's no second, is there any discussion?
The Pierce Township resident, I think that we should all be notified.
Well, here's the thing. While I oftentimes work with Channel 9 and the I team, and I have a great deal of respect for the reporters on this particular story. I would say that the story had a lot that was left out of it, that when you do careful investigation of it, that it was not factually correct. One of the main components that was factually incorrect is that it implied that the two monitoring wells were not reported in the quarterly report, when in point of fact they were. It also stated that the wells were out, but very quickly glossed over the fact that they were 2 out of 25 wells that monitor the watering, the water, the effluent that comes off the site. So, and then the final piece that was left out is the county was notified. And the reason why there was no additional notification is because the quarterly report was factually correct. There were no violations. And so there would be no need to notify us of anything because there was no violation. Now, I can also tell you that when there are violations or there are issues, like for instance, a couple of years ago, when pollutants got into the Ohio River, Craig, were you notified?
Yes, because we were on site when it occurred.
Right. When the pollutants got into the Ohio River from the diesel spill, OEPA was with us immediately. So from those perspectives, we do get notified when there is something to notify us about. In this particular case, since the developer passed their quarterly, everything was considered acceptable, all the levels. While we don't like the things that are on that site, those levels were not out of line. And so everything was turned in on time and they checked out. The counties, that report, that quarterly report, it's important to note, the county received it. It was on their desk. Whether they read it, I can't speak to that. So EPA did everything they were supposed to do and they checked off everything. What I would also recommend, though, to your point, we have had for a long time a section on our webpage that talks about Beckjord, and it has a lot of the historic things that have happened on that site, the things that this township has done, and some of the things that, quite frankly, CLP has done. I would like to pull that forward so that we used to have a bullet point that was on the front page so people could click through and see it. The federal government did us a wonderful favor, and they gave us they required that this group, CLP, that since it's a coal ash residual site, they are required to put up a web page that has every document that they ever file on that site. Now, I don't want you to have to go Google it and look for it, because I just sent the link over to Eddie McCarthy. And Eddie, if you could make sure that that link is included in all of our Beckjord report information. I think that would give you updates on a very regular basis. In fact, that quarterly report is hanging on that site. So, I mean, that's as I dug through it. And again, I have a great deal of respect for Paula Christensen. I think she does a great job. She and I have worked on a number of stories together on this site that warranted concern and our involvement. And I've been involved with NOPE for 8 or more years. So NOPE is the organization in your neighborhood, neighbors opposed to pit expansion. So for that reason, I'm not sure that there's a necessity for this action. And I'm happy to let Paula Christian know that I didn't like her story.
So I'll expand just a moment, Mr. Taylor. So let me expand on the couple of comments that my esteemed colleague made. The county's attorney informed the public that they were not notified. I'm not sure where you got your information, Mr. Freeman, but the county attorney, the attorney representing the county in this regard, made the statement that the county was not notified. The county commissioners were not aware of this information. So you're getting information from a source. I don't know. I'm not asking where that came from.
The Ohio Environmental Protection Agency.
Okay, that very reputable agency, the Ohio EPA. Okay, so the county, however, on the record, was not aware. We were not notified. You've not, just a minute, I'm not finished yet. Do not interrupt me. You notice that I used several words in here purposefully. I said potentially this and potentially that. I don't know what happened there. Now, I, as a medical doctor, when I have concern that potentially carcinogenic compounds are entering our water supply, whether factual or not, the question remains, should we be informed? The answer to that question, in my mind, is really quite simple. We should be informed. You should be informed. The entire county should be informed. That's derived wherever the county gets its water supply. All the customers of those organizations should be informed. Now, that's all I'm asking, is for a request for information to be in the loop. I do not want to be seen as being asleep at the wheel when this is going on in my backyard. And I have professional experience with what potentially could happen. So I will go on record as saying that the community should hold this body accountable should we not act at election time. Now, that's a very serious allegation, and I realize that, but I cannot see any wrongdoing in our being asked to be kept in the loop. And anyone that were to go on record as opposing that has not thought this through very carefully. Now, to go back to the reporter, I don't know this reporter. I am not questioning her credentials. I read what you read. That is how I found out. That is not how I should have found out. That you should expect more as citizens of us to protect you, to act prudently, to exercise fiduciary responsibility. And if you don't understand the definition of that, it's not complicated. We are required to act in your best interest. We have taken an oath to that effect. And if we do not do so, you should hold us responsible. That's all I have to say. Mr. Taylor.
I don't know what happened, but I can tell you this. Having lived down at that end of Longland, whenever the ash pits were not wet down or out, whatever you call that, we would get ash blown over our house and everything else. And Metro was very, very quick to buy our silence on that. So my question back to you was, even if it doesn't appear like both of those wells were out or whatever happened to those wells, how much did it take for its danger?
We don't know the answer to that, unfortunately, and I couldn't explain that as a medical professional, certainly, but the potential is there, and when we don't understand the potential, we need to be informed, and then we can do our own research. We can conceivably employ individuals who are experienced in this respect, either as a body or as a county. I don't know the answer to that, but I do know that the potential exists clearly.
So I can maybe hop in. I think I'm a little better informed on the answer to that question. The county is not relying on CLP to determine whether or not your drinking water is safe or not. So if you can imagine, they're not going to rely on a private entity and their own, monitoring system to go ahead and let them know if everything's okay. There's two interceptor wells between the potential contaminants from the fly ash and the drinking water, the aquifer that, you know, and so the aquifer is a, you know, giant underground lake that sits next to the Ohio River. And the water that goes into there leaches through the river. It filters through a lot of sediment and things, and it's fairly clean by the time it gets into the aquifer. And that's where the water for the county is drawn from. In between that aquifer and the potential contaminants of the fly ash are two interceptor wells. And those are really responsible for keeping things out and monitored. I believe, I'm fairly certain, by the county. One of them, and to my knowledge, would be sufficient, but they have a redundant interceptor well. So there's actually two of them, just to be sure. The wells that we're talking about that were not, you know, reported are one of, I was informed. And so when I heard the story, I called Lyle Bloom from the county, and I think Lyle's head of water resources at Claremont. And he informed me that he thought there were, Alan, you said 25, 30 of these other wells, and they're sporadic throughout the site, but they're not providing water or anything. They're not the well in the sense that, you know, you're going to go and take something out of it and drink it, or they're not providing an assistance or anything. Their sole purpose is to monitor contaminants. So on a quarterly basis, CLP hires a third-party company to go around and take samples out of these wells and see if there's any kind of contaminant in the well. They went around on their quarterly check for this well, for the wells, and realized that two of them, as far as I understand, are out of commission. And they reported that on their quarterly check. Now, how long had they been out? Could they have been out for a while? They could have been out for a quarter, is my understanding, which is not good, but it's how the process works. And they reported that to the EPA, and shortly thereafter it was reported to the county. Lyle Bloom, from what he told me, he was in the know. Now, the county attorney may have said, well, we didn't, you know, the county commissioners weren't aware of it, which could be true. But perhaps from Lyle's perspective or CLP's perspective, it just didn't elevate to that, you know, level. It's not a good thing, but they were on top, fairly on top of it, is after a quarterly check. And they are technically also, to be sure, required to report this stuff to the EPA. So the county, and we would be even a third, like a distant third of that, is not really required to be at the table. At CLP, per how it works, I'm not saying I agree with it, but how it works is that they are responsible, as far as teeth go, to the Ohio EPA. The county has no teeth. We have zero teeth with these folks. We can't go in and make them do anything. Neither can the county, but the county does. They agree to bring the county to the table. They are in talks with the Ohio EPA and with the well. So I mean, I get it. I've had a lot of issue with what's going on down there in certain scenarios when the smokestack got demolished and part of that fell into the river. I mean, I was in constant communication with Craig, and you did a great job with that, by the way, ultimately getting the Army Corps of Engineers in here to hold them accountable for pulling that debris out of the river, because it's just been, they've kind of floated in between agencies, and it's been really hard to pin them down on who's gonna be responsible. So I mean, I don't, you know, it kind of, to bring it back to this motion, I don't really have it just doesn't really mean anything. I mean, this motion is really just somewhat empty.
No,
and I mean, if it comes down to election time, since that's getting brought up, Pete, I mean, I'm sure it may serve well in election time. It could perhaps serve well in election time. But what I feel my responsibility is for a trustee, and I feel like anybody who's been around for the last 5 years or so knows this, I'm a rubber meets the road kind of guy. I mean, I like to do the best I possibly can. Never been a big one on fanfare. To do the best I possibly can to deliver for our residents. And I don't really mind the motion, but it is just, I mean, if you're going to pick a hill to die on, there's been so many, I wouldn't say so many, but there has been other more salient issues going on down at the site.
Which the township has fought.
That we've been able to work through with CLP also to some extent through a decent collaboration and good communication. And again, they're not required to keep us in the loop here. And they're actually not even required to keep Claremont County in the loop. But I don't agree with it. I think they should be required. I think there should be some local jurisdiction. We have the most skin in the game as a township in Pierce and as trustees we're ground level. Our residents are directly affected by this stuff. I wish it were different, but they plow all the way up to the line to the Ohio EPA. And a lot of times the Ohio EPA is like, well, we got a lot on our plate, or, they seem kind of dismissive about it. And it's really hard to pin things down. I think that was generally kind of the issue with the smokestack. We've had some little fires during demo down there that we've been kind of, as a fire department, able to somewhat keep control on. We had some dust blowing to 52 at one point that we weren't really sure where the dust came from, but obviously concerned it was. But every step of the way, I've been fairly well in tune with everything. And push come to shove, they have been fairly, they've communicated fairly well when we need them to. And we are getting closer to the end of this process. And I want to think about strategically how we approach all this and ensuring that what we're doing makes sense and what we're doing has teeth. And if it's not going to have teeth, I'm trying to see the value in something like this, I guess.
So the action of inaction is something all of you should concern yourselves with, the action of our inaction. Okay. And that speaks volumes. Just those.
Well, let's talk about the inaction.
Wait,
So
Mr.
for
Freeman,
the last-
as I said,
no,
Mr.
no,
Freeman,
I-
do not interrupt me. I have the floor. Please have some decorum. Please, for the sake of these residents, the constituents you represent, please have some decorum. So the action of inaction, I think, is something for which you should hold us responsible for. This request is not complicated mathematics. All I'm asking for is that we be kept in the loop. They are not required to do anything. They may not be required to do anything for a generation, but we as elected officials, you as citizens with potential health concerns down the road, multi-generationally, should have concerns. Okay, so all I'm asking, I'm really not asking for anything that's complicated. I'm asking to be kept informed. To find out about something like this when I saw it on the news is really, it's egg on my face. I'm embarrassed for myself, quite truthfully, and I'll take responsibility. I should have known about this, and I'm sorry that I did not. But this is not an empty request. I think our going on record to state, to express ourselves out of concern for our residents, not only our residents in Pierce Township, but the residents of this county. If we do not state our concern, then we are complicit if something happens down the road. We are on record for this. And I quite frankly could not accept anything but that. Now, I realize this motion may fail, and that's fine. That's your gentleman's decision to make. But I've gone on record with my concerns. I feel they're reasonable. I don't think they're extraordinary. I don't think the request is extraordinary. And I remind you that many, many years ago, and many of you may be familiar with this movie, Aaron Brockovich comes to mind. So Pacific Gas and Electric in some small town or towns in rural California saw it fit to poison their residents over a period of years with a form of chromium that caused, in fact, what I just mentioned, multi-generational cancers, which is malignancies, neurologic disorders, yada, yada, yada. And I'm not minimizing any of that. The suffering that those people went through and that their families will go through for a generation is inexcusable. And for us, once again, to not act in some very simple way, requesting that we keep ourselves, that we be kept in the loop, is embarrassing. Thank you. Mr. Freeman had the floor next. I'm sorry, Doug.
No, Doug, go ahead.
So I guess, having more information is great as far as number of, wells and that type of thing, but, yeah, and it is an issue when things go out there in the public media like that are, don't provide enough detail for the resident. It's okay. That's comforting to know that, there's like 30 of them and 2 of them that they're going to have a problem with the report. So then my question to their IDA and basically the others, okay, so what's been done about these 2 and monitoring?
You guys are all going around what we should do and who we should write letters to. What's the status?
The status is that they're back online. And they,
So I just. True things in the media, you know.
Right.
It would be, I thought. I read that and, you know, shared it on Facebook, because I was pretty disgusted about it, you know, it was like, you know, of course it didn't provide all the facts. But at the same time, you know, we need to understand what's going on.
well, but the only problem that I have, and, you know, we've fought, you've been in this room, you know that I have been fighting this issue for a long time. We've been working with NOPE on their lawsuit. We've been down at the site bitching and moaning about the effluent for a long time. In fact, in point of fact, the reason why there's a redundant well is because this township, along with the county, insisted upon it. So that interceptor well is not just one well, it's two wells, and those were working fine. There are, as again, 25 wells that are on that site that are monitoring every little move that it makes. The real problem that I see, I'm with Pete on this, or with Nick on this, that I'm kind of a rubber meets the road kind of guy. What are you going to do about it? And so I could care less about getting a letter from OEPA, because I can pick up the phone and ask them. When I saw the story, that was the first place I went. When Nick saw the story, he went to Water Resources, which is what we've done. We've bootstrapped all the way through this, like we've had to do with the problem on Pond Run. We don't have the authority. We don't have the power to do much about it, but we've been able to build a pretty good resume of fighting it for a long time. Well, and that's what I recommended. If we put the link onto our webpage, then people can see the site, and as the reports come in. The issue that we have is that again, in this case, there would be no reporting, there would be no red flag, because CLP's quarterly report matched what the previous reports and the previous reports before that. Now, one other thing that happened is that in the last year or two, the US EPA has started to come back onto the site. Now, see, historically, which has been left out tonight, is that originally it was the Obama administration, then carried forward onto the Trump administration. They wanted rid of coal effluent. They wanted rid of the coal ash residual. They didn't want to deal with the issue. So they put out an order that said that if you shut down your plants on this date, we won't hold you responsible for the coal ash. We'll turn this over to your state's EPA. A group of environmental folks filed a lawsuit, and they changed that opinion. So now the folks at US EPA are back on the site. Now, I know you don't feel very strongly about Ohio EPA or US EPA, but there's now some discussion about moving the ash off the site, period. And that's something we want to be focused on. We want to be focused on trying to see if we can move that ash off the site, so it takes away that issue completely. Now, there are some folks that have worked very hard with the neighbors opposed to pit expansion. We have teamed with them over this process. They are filing a lawsuit. We have helped them with their lawsuit. So to say that we're negligent, or we haven't paid attention to this, or we're not in the game, or we have a fiduciary responsibility, which we don't. But to say all those things implies that we haven't had a history here, that we haven't done anything over the years. We haven't fought this battle. And the truth is, we fought it tooth and nail. We were in the trenches a long time ago fighting this battle. And when I see a motion like this, I'm with Nick. It doesn't mean much. So what are we going to do? Well, first thing that we're going to do is we're going to make sure that the public can see that site that the US EPA has required CLP to put out there. So you can monitor it anytime you want. You can go look at it anytime you want. We can look at it anytime we want. So we can educate ourselves, make sure that we're good citizens on this, and we can focus on it. The next thing we can do is, what I've done is ask the US EPA or the Ohio EPA to come in and give us a briefing on exactly what that process is. At the moment, they claim that the process is that they require CLP to do their studies, to check their monitors, wells and everything every quarter. Those reports are all filed on that website and given to the county. If there is a red flag, then or Ohio EPA will go out and retest that well and see if there's a long-term problem. If there is a red flag that pops up after that, and it's not just a fluke, then all the agencies will be notified and we will be brought in. Depending upon what it is, it could be that they bring in Chief Wright, which they've done. It could be that they bring in John Kohler because they need to move, talk about access to the site and doing something different. So we'll be brought in on a tabletop if that is the case. Now, we've got this motion and a lot of vitriol around this motion. Again, our public wants us to take action, but our public also wants us to be responsible when we take that action and be thoughtful when we do it. So I hear a lot of words around it. I hear a lot of red flags. I hear Aaron Brockovich brought into it. And these are things that are irresponsible until you do the homework. And we've done the homework. We've been in this trench for a long time. We've gone to the deal with the lawyer that's working on this. We've talked to Nope. We've shared that trench. To act like we haven't done anything or that we're negligent or we're not watching or we're not paying attention, that's just short-sighted or perhaps ignorant. But either way, it's not responsible. And these people deserve more from us. And we need to get to the bottom of the line. Where we need to really be focused is, and this is something I brought up with Ohio EPA, and I want to have this answer, is who's going to be monitoring the wells in 20 years from now when CLP is bankrupt or sold to a Chinese firm or whatever happens to them. That's the vague spot. And that's what they need to know, not some action that we're just, knee jerk. We want to have some knowledge about what that looks like. And that's where we need to be focused. And that's why I talked to Ohio EPA. What is that process moving 25 years down the line? They didn't give me a very good answer for that. And so we may have to create legislation that addresses it. But those are actions that matter, not actions that just show color.
There's nothing colorful about this. And some of your accusations are quite frankly inflated and to use a very simple term that you may understand, ridiculous. I did not infer, Mr. Freeman, that this board had not done its job or that it had prior to now been asleep at the wheel. Okay, if you inferred that, then perhaps you inferred that based on, something that might concern you from your past. I don't know. But for you to suggest that I am inferring that you didn't do your jobs, I didn't suggest that at all. All I'm suggesting is that we be kept in the loop. It's not complex math.
That's pretty arrogant and it's pretty talking down. I mean,
talking down. Who's talking down? What you started the talking down, Mr. Freeman. Please, I'm trying to execute a simple request that we ask to be informed. It is not complicated. I'm not asking for more than that. And I don't want to waste the public's time anymore on this because I can see that you're clearly not going to be flexible on this point. And that's okay. I can live with that, but the public may not be able to do so. Was there any further comment? Just a minute.
What is that?
Just a minute. Let's have somebody else.
What is that supposed to mean, Pete?
I see a whole bunch of sea lighting from everyone, county, everyone. So let's put that bullshit off. The issue is 2 wells on that. The 2 wells now are operation. I did not know that. Were they operational? Things break in life. We have 25 wells. 23 said everything's full. They found out that 22 were broken, whatever that means. Did they fix them right away? Are we reacting to some jackass reporter?
Yes.
On still at this TV station, not all of it was that internet. You're reacting to something that might not be an issue. If they found they were broken, they were fixed in a reasonable time. 5 months of time.
We don't know that.
Yes, we do.
We don't know that.
We do know that.
It depends on which. No, that's not the case at all.
No,
I'm asking.
they are functional. They're back online.
Mrs. Taylor.
Seems very reasonable to me. I don't understand why they wouldn't want to be notified.
Well,
Nothing about the past, nothing about the future. Why? Notify if there's a problem.
Well, so to take that off the table a little bit, I'll just make the motion. But I don't appreciate the emotional, the rhetoric and the kind of the avoid. I think I agree with you, sir. You more or less hit it on the head. I mean, I don't think you're too far off on anything there. And I do think that if you get too hyper focused on lip service with something like that, you can kind of defer responsibility for taking real action on something. And I just want to ensure that in addition to this, and I'll go ahead and make the motion, but that real action is taken, that we continue to follow up with Lyle Bloom from the county, and that we also continue to be mindful about how we approach this, because again, they're just not required to keep us in the loop. And if we want our best possible results, we do have to attract some bees with honey. Okay. So I just want to make sure that we continue to keep a good relationship the best we can with CLP, so that we continue to stay in the loop and we continue to get the best results possible, because that's what it's about. If we had more teeth, if we were the Ohio EPA, I would probably take a different approach, to be honest with you, but we don't. So, I mean, I'm just saying, I'm going to make the motion. That's not really what it's about to me. I just want to ensure that this issue is given the proper significance, and not something that's more hollow in the sense than just keep me informed. I've been fairly informed along the way, and each time we've had to get kind of creative because we're not the operating agency to hold their feet to the fire as to how we get things done down there. And I feel like we have, and I want to continue to.
That's not maybe what the motion said, though. We're not going to speak to the fire.
Exactly.
We just want to know what's going on.
That's exactly my point. I have no issue with the motion, but I would also like to follow it up with some meaningful action as far as keeping us in the loop, as to asking Claremont County. I'll call Lyle Bloom and see if perhaps we can get some folks to our next meeting to inform us about the subsequent meeting that should be occurring between them and the Ohio EPA, as far as he told me. So I don't think that there's any kind of issue. It's just that you have to work behind the scenes the best you can with these people, because they're not really required to give us any information. And so I want to keep a good working relationship to the best of our ability. And I also think that he brought up a good point, that it's in this particular case, this is an emotional reaction to a story that was probably blown out of proportion by the news media. I mean, that's what it is. I mean, that's my perception.
So while this may be symbolic, I don't want to interrupt you.
Yeah, no, you're fine.
Okay. While this may be truly symbolic, that may have been the intent here. Okay. We have to start somewhere. And I understand that this may not have teeth. This was not designed to have any teeth. This is going on record saying we want our public to be informed. Inform us. That's all.
So
ma'am, she had her hand up.
Cards and Farm Road and possibly all Pierce Township. That's told what's going to be done at that shore. And right now we're in that cleanup stage, and we know we're in that cleanup stage, and we know this timeline, but we really don't know what's going on. And even last meeting, people on the road were asking what's going on at that shore, because you see so many big machines down there, and it looks like they're taking down the edge of the pond and the levee. There are so many changes going on, and no, they don't have to update that. But I think the fact that what we're breathing in, let alone the groundwater, we do need to know what's going on. And it wouldn't hurt them one iota to notify the township and to notify the people on the road that's breathing that air what is happening down there, because there are definite changes. So I think this is an appropriate measure that we go ahead and notify, and that they need to even extend some type of further notification to us as to what's happening. And in addition, is what the timeline is.
Well, perhaps we can also reach out to CLP if they're willing. Because they have done group meetings here that I think it was a trustees meeting, or maybe we did a special meeting of the trustees, but that would probably be more appropriate to ensure the proper time is given. A special meeting of the trustees and see if a representative from CLP may be willing to attend. We could reach out to someone at the county and perhaps somebody at the Ohio EPA and see if we can get something more informative for the residents as to where they're at with things. We'll reach out to everybody and hopefully we can get a result.
So
If you
Pete,
can move it if you want. I think we've said our pieces.
no, I don't think we have.
Okay, go ahead.
So Pete, in the interest of being flexible, I will make a second on this particular motion.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. Is that-
You guys, if I could see it. First of all, two things.
Nick.
CLP and distrust and no trust put together real well for us. I mean, all of a sudden there's a most packed in the water. The second thing is that meeting is real important because we don't get it. In your relation, you recognize the relationship of getting anything done is no letter. It isn't anything. It's saying, guys, we're a team. You know, here's our fire department, they've done everything, here's our facilities, here's our police. You've got it done, we can't attack it. It will not work. You get us all together and what's your plan? No. This is not my opinion. Of my 50 years in business, when you don't have a team, then you better have a way of being a friend. And how can we be their friend and help them out? And it sounds like your approach, and I agree with it 100%.
And therein lies the balance, and I agree with a lot of what you said. And this is not meant to be, if you heard what I said specifically, this was not an inflammatory request by any stretch. It was.
You may not think it was.
This is not the letter. The letter, it was not inflammatory. I defended my position scientifically and accurately, with all due respect.
As a third party team.
There's a motion on the floor and a second. Roll call.
Mr. Kelly.
Here.
Yes.
I think it was a yes.
Mr. Freeman.
Yes.
And Ms.
Yes. Okay, moving on. Thank you for your thoughtful commentary, ladies and gentlemen. All right, moving on, item number 2 on the.
Not now.
Hold on a second. Let me get a new business. Okay. The topic of solar farms, industrial solar has been around for a while now in the township, in the county. There are a couple of townships that are affected by this in the more rural part of Claremont County. And I guess my intent in requesting a motion that we start to look into this is that so we get ahead of it, basically. And my request for a motion, or my motion, will be to ask our staff to prepare a fact sheet, including a summary of the township's position on large-scale commercial solar installations in the community. This information is to be considered by the Board of Trustees at the regular March meeting and forwarded to Claremont County Commissioners. The further background on that is that the county is developing, trying to develop guidelines in terms of how to approach these kinds of requests as they come along. And they've prepared an algorithm, a fact sheet, requesting information of each jurisdiction, including us. And this motion simply requests that we comply with that request. And that we outline our intentions or our preliminary policy according to the questions that they've asked on this request for information. That's the request before the board. So I'll make the motion to that effect.
Well, isn't that included in our land use plan? Discussion of solar?
Yeah, there have been some discussion regarding solar and public survey and that sort of thing. One of the implementation steps that's in draft form recommended is to do a deeper dive on some of these documents. At this point, it's kind of an issue of timing and that sort of thing. And I know that the county, I think right now, that part of economic development is putting material, education material out and so forth right now. In order to formulate the countywide policy on the matter. So for us, it's just a timing matter, however the board would like to prioritize.
So we don't have, I mean, we've gone out and we've collected some data. We just don't have enough of the data to include in our land use plan.
Well,
Because that's really what the county's looking for is inclusion into the land use plan.
yeah, we're at the point now where depending on how we want to stage everything up and prioritize, having a work session type of circumstance or whatever you deem appropriate, white paper, that sort of thing, in order to determine more specific nitty gritty. We kind of did an initial, almost like just put the feelers out to figure out what the county's feeling like generally regarding solar, what their thoughts were. And it's a little bit of a complicated matter because there's commercial scale, there's utility scale, and then there's residential scale. So we kind of have to net out these various different items in order to really get into it. Right now, we're kind of at 10,000 feet, and getting a policy over to the county is kind of what where we are right now with this utility scale. That's the
So that's in progress right now.
not formally, no. Just solar, that was kind of staff anticipated that being an item that would come up due to conversations we've been having with the county. And so we included some public input in order to get feedback on it generally. But we have a number of different implementation actions and whatnot, in making recommendations to set policy. So we haven't formally put staff resources into really researching these items yet.
So as a bandwidth question, I know you're doing the land use plan. You now have a new title. So you'll be dealing with some economic development work. As far as bandwidth, what time frame could you get something like this accomplished?
So that's a good question. The main item would be, well, there's two things. Number of resources you want to dedicate to it. But two, if there are right now staff kind of, I know defer to Administrator Williams on this mostly, but for the most part, my perspective would just be if everyone's goals are the same on it, it would be a very easy process. If we're not really quite sure and you're just asking for black and white, what does staff think generally? That's another work product entirely. But it really the big question for us is if everyone's on the same page from the goals perspective, and that's what the planning process is for. We would know kind of where the runway is, how to take off, and that sort of thing.
Would it be prudent to, rather than put together a letter that we don't have the details or the parameters for, would it be prudent for us to put in a moratorium with regard to solar installations, large scale solar installations, until we can get that done?
Well, two things. Well, but Mr. Williams has a thought on that, but I just want to say with the work session coming up next month in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
This could obviously be a really significant part of that conversation, and staff would have an understanding, okay, here's how you'd like us to go one way or the other on that sort of thing, but I defer.
Well, no, and I want to defer to our legal counsel because we did ask that question. I did ask that question as to whether it's actually in our purview under the current state law, whether we could do a motion and a moratorium on that. And I think that she could answer that. Ms. Barbary can answer that.
We can.
They're accepted from local township settings. So if they get certification through the state, there's nothing you can do to stop that construction of large scale there.
So to give you kind of a background on why this matters is that some communities have seen a proliferation of these solar farms. And when they say a solar farm, they're not kidding. It means a farm. So it has all of the attributes, as some of you know, we've had the issue up on Pond Run with regard to the party barn that's up there. Well, inside state law, there are exceptions to our zoning, and all of those fall under agricultural use. Okay. So if you are a farmer, farmers have wanted to get additional revenue off of their lands. And so they've carved out these new rules to allow for agribusiness to be included. So some very smart people, I suppose, decided that when I put a solar panel in, that's a farm, right? And so I'm harvesting the sun. And so that applies as agribusiness. And so I get to use those exemptions. So that word farm is active. It is not just a fun, look at that farm, isn't it cute? So that's why we have to be concerned about this. Now, in our township, we're a little bit better off. I've talked to a number of the other townships around us, and some of them don't really, some of them, in fact, Washington Township is an example of it. They have no zoning whatsoever. And so when they have no zoning, they have no hope. Because those panels will go in wherever they want to go, whenever they want to go, and as far as they want to go. That matters to them even more because Zimmer Power Plant's been shuttered, and the owner of that plant probably will put in solar farms in that area. So stopping them is a little bit harder, or is impossible. In our case, we have higher priced real estate, so it's not as prevalent. We're not going to see this proliferation of solar panels. So the rush is not as great as it is in places like Washington Township. And so what the county has been doing is gathering up information about what the townships want to do about solar farms. As far as a letter is concerned, it's neither here nor there. You can do a letter. I'd rather do a policy. I wish I could do a moratorium until I could get a policy in place, but I guess I can't because of the agricultural amendments here. And so that's why it is important to do. It is important to try to pursue. But I would only ask that we hold it off until Eddie has more data and perhaps even more bandwidth to address it. I don't think we're going to see, solar panels going in large portions of Pierce Township because we don't have the large scale property to do it. But you could see it over off of Hamlet, over off Malk Road, places like that, where you could see a solar farm start to proliferate. But I'd like to get that into the land use plan because then it becomes more permanent and it deals with us. So I'd rather take a more active approach rather than just write a letter.
No, this is not requesting that we write a letter. The county's actually issued a request for information. This is basically just filling in the blanks with where we feel we are on this topic. That's all.
I think a letter is perfectly fine, Pete, but I'd also like to drive toward action as well.
Oh, this is once again, a first step in that action. We have to start somewhere, Mr. Freeman. This is all a process, it evolves over time. So that's all I mean.
They're two separate items. A letter, which is fine. When you've got the data, you should do it. And I'll make the motion that we do it. But on the other hand, let's get it into that land use plan. Let's include it so that we're protected. And we're not waiting for the county to do something.
From a practical perspective, so with work session, it'll be upcoming. One of the things, and there's three things that complicate this. One, there's utility scale, there's commercial scale, and then there's residential scale. The public utility, there's the utility scale, which I believe no more. But the commercial role, I'm not quite sure. Maybe it's the same.
It's dependent on whether they get a certificate through the agency. So if it could be, utility scale without a certificate and we could regulate that. But if they have a state issued certificate, then we can't do any regulation. So I don't know that the commercial utility matters as much as whether they've actually been certified.
But it's one of those, as I understand it, it's one of those things that since we have zoning, we may not be able to zone it out, but we can tell our zoning code where we don't want it.
Yeah, so, can we kind of, I think it's fine. This should be part of the land use plan, though. It should fit in as where it's appropriate, and you're getting close to the end anyway, so I can't imagine it not fitting in.
So that's exactly one of the things, one of the items, we're not gonna, remake the wheel. But at the work session, one of the main things is we'll figure out where does everyone kind of fall on, where you place.
Okay.
And that'll be the work product that comes out, and then Mr. Williams, I'll be able to actually put something coherent together to actually do that.
I think that sounds great.
Cool.
That sounds great. And we will be able to comply with that request for information thereafter. So I'm fine tabling this. I'd just like to get the ball rolling at some
You made the
point.
motion, didn't you?
I did.
Okay, I'll second the motion.
Okay, motion is good.
Debbie, roll call.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Freeman,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell.
Yes. The next one's simple. I don't think there'll be a whole lot of discussion, but let's see. Okay, I respectfully request a motion to alter the regular April Board of Trustees meeting date from April the 12th to April the 5th, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. or another date that might suit the other trustees better than that one.
April 5th? The
Yes.
proposed date?
April the 5th, yes.
Okay. I'm fine with it. So moved.
Seconded.
Roll call, Debbie.
Mr. Kelly.
Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Freeman.
Yes.
Mr. Campbell.
Thank you. Yes. All right. I request the board consider that we set a date for a special work session to discuss economic planning issues. What do you gentlemen think?
Okay. Yeah, I'm fine with it. What economic development?
Yes.
What we've done in the past, Pete,
Mhm.
is that we've had multiple meetings, one dealing with economic development, the other one dealing with the budget, and at a third where we've dealt with infrastructure issues.
Mhm.
So I would only ask that an amendment, that a friendly amendment be made to include those other areas,
Oh, by all means, absolutely.
and that we work on trying to schedule that meeting, those meetings.
So kind of update on
Certainly.
all fronts
Uh-huh.
or
As
a
we've
work
done
session on all fronts. Yeah, yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
The fine suggestion.
Well, I will make the motion. Are we going to try to pick a date? Or you
We
want to
could
just direct staff to?
Yeah, let's
find a
direct staff
date
to
within the next
look for some dates that work for all three of us.
So moved.
second.
Roll call.
Mr. Freeman.
Yes.
Mr. Kelly.
Yes.
Mr. Campbell.
Yes. Mrs. Schweig.
And Mr. Freeman.
Yeah, there's a missing motion. Trustee Freeman requests a motion to direct township staff to draft the policy for board consideration, setting rules for events in township parks sponsored by private entities. The reason why I bring this forward is that something we've talked about for a number of years and never done. There have been several opportunities for our parks to be used by outside agencies, and we've never been able to do them because we didn't have a policy. So that said, I would like to direct staff and others to start to develop that policy.
That has been an issue on a case by case basis. I can think of several, and then it gets brought back to us, and then we have to decide kind of subjectively, I'll say for lack of a better term, based on our feelings about that specific. Okay, I'll make the motion.
Second.
Mr. Kelly.
Yes.
Mr. Campbell.
Yes.
Mr. Freeman.
Yes.
I request a motion to pay the Center for Local Government membership dues for 2023 in the amount of $3,875.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Kelly.
Yes.
Mr. Freeman.
Yes.
Mr. Campbell.
Yes.
I request a motion to advance $400,000 from the general fund to the lease levy and repay back the funds when we receive our monies from the county.
You want to talk any more about that? Provide some background.
Little context.
Oh, the waste levy, is depleted and there wasn't enough money for a carryover for the new year. So I am requesting that we take an advance from the general fund temporarily until we receive our funds from the county.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Kelly.
Yes.
Mr. Freeman.
Yes.
And Mr. Campbell.
Yes.
I request a motion to pay W. Smith Construction for Whole Road erosion mitigation in the amount of $62,428.08 from the Preservative Fund. And this is the final payment. This is our part of the matching fund.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Freeman.
Yes.
Mr. Kelly.
Yes.
Mr. Campbell.
Yes.
And I request a motion for resolution 2023-001, establishing a special assessment fund for the Glen Marion Town.
So moved.
Seconded.
Roll call.
Mr. Kelly.
Yes.
Mr. Freeman.
Yes.
Mr. Campbell.
Yes.
And I did not get my significant time for the two for the bills and payroll. I will have for the next.
Promise.
Promise.
Okay,
I did get the checkbook back.
all right.
Are you sure about that?
Yes.
Thank you, Debbie. Administrator Williams?
Yes, Administrator Williams requests a motion for resolution 2023-005, appointing required member of the township, which by law is the chair of the board, to the 2023 Tax Incentive Review Commission for Clermont County.
So move. Second.
Roll call?
Mr. Freeman.
Yes.
Mr. Kelly.
Yes.
Mr. Campbell.
Yes. Administrator Williams?
Yes, Administrator Williams requests a motion authorizing the township administrator to sign a temporary easement agreement with New Richmond Development Corporation LLC for access to a strip of property abutting Pond Run Road to repair road slippage. We have, our legal counsel has sent something to what was CLP is now the New Richmond Development Corporation for some of the property that abuts Pond Run Road. We will need to get onto their property. We've been talking with them for a good while on that, and Ms. Barbiera did a good job of finally getting that kicked out. So hopefully we'll have that agreement before the end of the week, so we can sign it, and then Mr. Kohler can schedule in to start that work.
So moved.
Seconded.
Roll call?
Mr. Kelly.
Yes.
Mr. Freeman.
Yes.
Mr. Campbell.
Yes. Police Chief Rockstrom?
I request a motion to purchase a 2023 white Chevrolet Traverse from Tom Gill Chevrolet for $41,563. This purchase replaces the 2022 Ford Explorer, which was approved at the October 12th, 2022 trustee meeting. That purchase did not occur due to the dealership canceling the order. This vehicle replaces vehicle 12, a 2011 Ford Explorer, which is no longer serviceable. So just to clarify, this was in the 2022 budget.
I'm glad you're getting it a little quicker. You probably need it. So moved.
Seconded.
Roll call?
Mr. Kelly.
Yes.
Mr. Freeman.
Yes.
Mr. Campbell.
Yes. Mr. McCarthy?
I think you missed.
No.
Hold on, hold on. I think we missed one from the police chief.
Chief Rockstrom?
He still has more to spend.
Yes, sir. We were able to find another Chev Tahoe for a road vehicle. So I request a motion to purchase a new 2023 Chevrolet Tahoe from Tim Lally Chevrolet. It says Tom, but it should be Tim Lally Chevrolet in the amount of $43,645. This vehicle replaces vehicle 4, a 2015 Ford Explorer, which has approximately 115,000 miles. Vehicle 4 is out of service and in need of major engine work. If the purchase is approved, the department intends on selling vehicle 4 on Gov Deals. And I might add that this purchase would be in accordance with the department's 6-year capital improvement plan.
Well, I'll make the motion with the amendment from Tom to Tim.
I'll second that.
Roll call?
Mr. Kelly.
Yes.
Mr. Freeman.
Yes.
Mr. Campbell.
Yes.
I request a motion. I'm sorry, sir, were you ready?
All right, then. I
Okay.
found my page.
I request a motion to purchase a records management system from Sundance Systems Incorporated. This system is much more advanced and efficient compared to the current system the police department uses through the state, which is OLEG. The initial cost of the system for year 1 is $22,640. The subsequent annual cost would be $14,340. The higher cost for year 1 is due to data integration. This purchase would be in accordance with the department's 6-year capital improvement plan.
I'll make a motion.
Seconded.
Roll call?
Mr. Kelly.
Yes.
Mr. Freeman.
Yes.
Mr. Campbell.
Yes. Chief?
I request a motion to donate a Smith & Wesson Model 28-2 Highway Patrol 357 revolver, serial number Nora 574959, to the Greater Cincinnati Police Museum. The revolver was in the police department's property room and part of a November 2022 approved order from the Claremont County Court of Common Pleas to dispose of forfeited property.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Freeman.
Yes.
Mr. Kelly.
Yes.
Mr. Campbell.
Yes.
And Mr. Chairman, I have one more that was not on the,
Yes.
lastly, I request a motion for fiscal to set up a line account for money that the department received from the Ohio Office of Criminal Justice Services in the amount of $11,615.32. This is for a grant that we received for funding for year one of our body cams, our body camera system. So we need a line item with fiscal to deposit that money into.
And that's because it is federal funds.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Freeman.
Yes.
Mr. Kelly.
Yes.
And Mr. Campbell.
Yes. Chief Wright.
I request a motion to terminate the part-time employment of firefighter EMT Joseph Welch effective January 31st, 2023.
So moved.
Second. Roll call.
Mr. Kelly.
Yes.
Mr. Freeman.
Yes.
Mr. Campbell.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. McCarthy, now it's your turn.
Eddie McCarthy requests a motion to approve resolution 2023-002 declaring a nuisance at 100 Pondview Drive in accordance with Ohio Revised Code 505.86.
A little context behind that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the structure in question was the now defunct and incomplete skilled nursing facility owned by Premier Health. There were a number of legal entanglements, but the facility has gone unfinished and has remained open to the elements for approximately 3 years at this point. The building department has sent them violation letters. We also sent them a warning letter in January detailing our concern for the status of the structure. We received a response back that the receivership is now insolvent, that they don't have any money to address matters on site. The building department followed up with them, sent a letter, an adjudication letter, CC'd us, detailing that the structure is structurally defective. So in accordance with 505.86, we were required to get a letter from the building department, for instance, regarding the status of the structure. The fact that they stated that it was structurally defective is evidence enough for us to initiate this process of declaring it a nuisance. Once we declare it a nuisance at this particular meeting, we then send them certified letters detailing what the process is, how they appeal, and what we intend to do, sort of thing. And at that point, they could appeal and what have you. But that would then give us the authority to go on site and make a determination as to how to rectify the matter. In particular, it looks like the most likely method would be to demolish the structure at this point in time.
Okay, so moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Freeman.
Yes.
Mr. Kelly.
Yes.
Mr. Campbell.
Yes. Mr. McCarthy.
Okay. So Eddie McCarthy requests a motion to approve resolution 2023-003, requesting a reallocation of previously granted community development block fund grants in the amount of $178,000 and approval to apply for an additional $59,500 in 2023 CDBG funds for demolishing the partially constructed structures at 100 Pondview Drive. The township will pledge a 5% match toward the demolition cost. And give some background on that too, if you'd like.
Yes, please, Mr. McCarthy.
So as you're aware, last year, the township was awarded $178,000 for a sidewalk project in the Hamlet area due to it being LMI and for there being a need for infrastructure improvements in that area to better serve the residents. However, matters have progressed with the Premier site, and it is staff's opinion that this appears to be a pretty significant issue with the structure being structurally defective, as well as with the potential slum and blighting effects that this structure can have on the area and investment that the private sector and other folks are putting into that area. With those CDBG funds available, staff contacted Claremont County Economic Development to determine if a reallocation of that 178,000 could be used for this purpose. The staff indicated that that would be an appropriate application if this board determined that that was a route that you would like to take. So staff then began working with the county a little bit further to determine what the estimated demolition cost might be for this particular structure. We received a couple quotes. One of the quotes was around $218,000, rounded up to $250,000 for contingency purposes by recommendation of Patriot Engineering, who provided these quotes. At that point, staff determined if theoretically the $178,000 could be reallocated, staff would pledge 5% and request the $59,500. This could essentially, the gap could be bridged and the structure could be demolished with CDBG funds taking that route. Under this approach, the application would likely be much more likely to be successful with the 5% match. The thought being what would happen is this would run its process. We would have an understanding within the next 6 months whether or not the 2023 reimbursement component would actually be approved. If that reimbursement of the $59,500 were approved, for instance, the township would end up spending $12,500 ultimately for the $250,000 demolition. So all any amounts that would be needed to bridge the 178,250 gap would be reimbursed. Effectively.
The value of cleaning up that eyesore for that corridor is, you know, I mean, great work on that. Really, you did a good job. And Tim, I know you were involved too. You guys did good work on that.
And it was great teamwork too with the county. I mean, I'm hoping that you get it across the finish line, because it's really, I think, a beginning phase of how we can work together with economic development, community development, and Pierce Township. And I got to tell you, it was largely, I'm sorry, Tim, but a lot of this was put together by Eddie. And so I got to hand it to you, Eddie. This is classic and I love it. It gets the job done, and, you know, it finds a way to limit the involvement of Pierce Township's budget. And so I really thank you for that. I think you did a great job. And I look forward to seeing that thing on the ground. But you know, Nick hit it right in the head. You did a great job, both of you.
Thank you.
And it's I think there's a lot of great opportunities moving forward.
So in short, you know, the maximum amount the taxpayers could be on the hook for would be, what, about $12,000? At least on its face.
Exactly, 12,500. And that's, you know, if the quotes, we kind of took a conservative approach by adding a bit of contingency on that. So theoretically, I mean, fingers crossed that once we bid the project out, hopefully it would be under 250. And then that 12,500 would go down. But yeah, we're thinking probably 12,500.
And over time, we will reap that money back many times over, I believe, in my opinion. So I agree. Good work. Motion on the floor. Somebody make one.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, Mr. McCarthy.
Okay. Eddie McCarthy requests a motion to approve resolution 2023-004, declaring a nuisance action in accordance with Ohio Revised Code 3767.41 on property located at 3603 Turnberry Drive. Building is found to be a public nuisance as a result of a structure fire causing significant damage to the home. This process would be very similar to the one that's being taken at Legendary Run property. That's the same statute that's being used.
I'll make the motion.
Seconded.
Roll call.
Yes.
Mr. Freeman.
Yep.
Mr. Campbell.
Yes. And I have one more item to add, and it's on a happy note. As many of you know, the Claremont County Chamber of Commerce hosts an annual Salute to Leaders banquet and awards ceremony. The purpose of that is to recognize individuals in this community who have volunteered their time towards its betterment. And I could think of no one better to nominate for an award other than Michelle Valside this year. And I'm going to make a motion That's why we asked you here. I hereby motion to nominate Pierce Township resident Michelle Balsad as the township's nominee to receive a Claremont County Chamber of Commerce Salute to Leaders Award for her dedicated volunteerism in coordinating and producing the annual Amelia Christmas Parade. This annual community event joyfully celebrates the Christmas season and the unity and community of the Amelia neighborhood and Pierce and Batavia townships. Michelle has committed countless volunteer hours to her community and this event, and for this, we are pleased to nominate her for this award. The Salute to Leaders Award ceremony and banquet will be held at the Oasis in Miami Township on March the 29th.
Well, we haven't gotten a second yet, have we?
Motion in a second. Do I need a second?
You do.
Oh,
Yes.
I will second. Thank you, Michelle.
Okay, roll call.
Mr. Campbell.
Yes,
Mr. Kelly.
Yes.
And Mr. Freeman.
congratulations.
No.
Very well deserved. We need more people like you. Thank you for what you've done. Thank you very much. Okay. Would you like to say anything?
Well, I say thank you, but it's an honor to volunteer. Everyone should, but some time back, if you have it. Some people, when I was younger with my kids, I didn't have the time. Now I have the time. So, thank you very much.
Thanks, Michelle.
See you on the 29th, if not before. Okay. Is there any other business that anyone would like to bring up?
I just have a question, if I don't understand it.
Yes, sir.
The structure of this, what does that mean?
I'm sorry, what?
You said, yeah, this proper.
Maybe our,
You start,
Take action, I don't understand. What follows the step.
Well, it depends on which statute you come there with declaring a nuisance. With respect to the Turnberry property that Mr. McCarthy just addressed, that's under the revised code section 3767-.41. By declaring that a nuisance, we're entitled to then proceed with court action. So we're gonna file a complaint for. With respect to the previous property, which was under 50586, that's a little bit of a different procedure, and as Mr. McCarthy explained, that allows them, if process goes through and there's no appeal on a nuisance count, that allows them to go on to the property and actually, fix or demolish the structure that is becoming a nuisance. So it just depends on which statute you're.
But this starts with you.
Yeah.
Oh, by the other day, I'm like, everyone.
something, huh? It's been a long road.
A lot of work in the back. They really do a lot.
Mr. Chairman, just if you were asking if there was any other business, I just wanted to make sure that to note to the board that we will probably need a special call meeting towards the end of this month to consider the bids for the solid waste and recycling that's coming in. So just to put that on your radar screen. Getting a group in here to work with us, an architectural crew. To deal with that. So, yeah, and I was again, just for time purposes earlier, I didn't want to get into it in too much detail, but yeah, I think I've talked to you individually, each of you. We're going to have a steering committee to work on that, starting with the RFP process. Our department heads, our fiscal officer, one of our trustees, so we can stay legal, and 3 of our residents will be involved in that process. They'll review the proposals as they come in the month of March. And our hope is by the April meeting that we'll have a recommendation to hire somebody to start that process. And they'll be working with that steering committee throughout the analysis process. Do you need to identify a trustee in order to go through the packets, or when do you need that trustee? Yeah, we would certainly like to have someone that we can identify, because I'll be trying to set that meeting up with our committee within the next couple of weeks, probably. Do you want us to identify one of the 3 of us tonight? That's entirely up to you all as to when you want to do that. I'll make a motion that Nick Kelly, if he's willing to do it, should serve in that capacity. Nick has a background in construction, so it kind of makes sense.
Are you willing?
I am. I've been dealing with Rumpke on that contract for a bit, so fairly familiar. So, yeah, thank you. I'm happy to do it.
Hang on one sec. We'll get to you. Do we need a motion to that effect, or can we just?
I made the motion.
You made a motion, okay.
So I need.
Then I'll second it. Roll call.
Mr. Freeman.
Yes.
Mr. Campbell.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
There we go.
Yes, sir.
I don't know if this is something that should be handled outside here. I'm Chris Nestor, I'm the HR Bottom Committee. And I would have come here today, this one, I got approached, I guess from gentlemen, and they made me take down all of the yard flags and let me know that apparently I'm not allowed to have the wacky inflated arm gun tube guy, which is, this is a big part of my advertising. I was wondering if I could get some help with that.
Well, thank you. First of all, thanks for coming and approaching us by all means. Would that be something you could work with, or Andrew, perhaps both of you, with this gentleman on offline?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
We can. And there are temporary sign options that we can help walk you through and everything to make sure that, everything can kind of run smoothly in that regard.
I've used the same things for 5 years, and my grandmother, who had it for 30 years before me, used the same thing. Apparently, Amelia didn't care,
Hey, what?
Yeah.
We'll gladly work with you. Thank you so much. Yes, sir. Yes.
Ready?
Sit down.
Or what is the bill like? I get to the front of the building torn down. Because as a former resident of that village, we all drive past there every day and have to see where I'm at. And the fighting that we did, and the fight that we put up, it still stands there. So when it comes down, it's almost like a ritual sport. An exercise rather than. So I don't want to say that to you. The other thing I just want to bring up, because I voiced my opinion about this at the joint meeting. And I want it to be stated here that I have concerns with that Dollar General being put there and people turning left out of that parking lot. That Jenny Lynn Chapel 125 is a nightmare on its own. And then you put a Dollar General there. I don't care how many signs, how many weighty people you put up there and say you can't turn left here, they're going to turn left.
Yeah.
And someone is going to be hurt or killed turning left out of that parking lot. Thank you.
The unfortunate fact is that,
It's not your option.
well, but it is our problem, because that road is shared by both of us. Yeah, both Batavia Township and Pierce Township. And as we try to look at economic opportunity, you saw the transportation study that we talked about tonight. As if they make decisions like that, that's going to impact the road, the way it works, the way it functions.
I happened to be at a Batavia Township meeting, which I only go twice a year, once to say I'm starting a parade, and once to say thanks for letting me have a parade. And I said, and the Dollar General guy happened to be there. Learn out his, his little proposal. And I said, well, that's a bad turning left out of there. What are you guys going to do about that? Traffic study. I haven't heard from Mr. Parsons, who said he was going to get me that information on that. So
ODOT is responsible for the functionality of that road. ODOT would be the one doing the transportation study, the network study. It might be worth talking to them, and I have a meeting with them next week, so I'll bring it up, see if I can get my hands on it.
Sorry about that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is there any other public comment? Yes, Mrs. Taylor.
About working on a noise ordinance that has a little bite to it. Has anything been done on that?
Chief, refresh my memory. We're going to look into whether or not we could make some recommendations on that. I don't recall the details, but perhaps you could refresh my memory.
Yes, sir. We are looking into that. We are working with our legal liaison Katie to research some best practices and some possible resolutions.
Okay. Okay, if there's nothing else, we're going to close this meeting, and then I'm going to just make one final comment that I appreciate each one of yours attendance, and we apologize for the lateness of the hour, but we had a lot of important information to cover. And at the end of the day, regardless whether or not we as individuals agree or disagree, you are assured that we're coming at these issues from the perspectives that we each have, and ultimately all of us in your best interest. We may not agree at the end of the day on how to get there, but we are in agreement that we are in a role, in a position to where we have to be proactive on your behalf. Thank you for your attendance. I request a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Roll call.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
Thanks.
We are done. I'm sorry. I don't get hot. Sometimes.